picked executive director at RJI. This is a big year for our annual competition because for the first time, we have teams competing from across the country. We also made a big change in how the contest is structured. We'll get to that in a minute. First, a little history. We started this competition when RJI opened its doors in 2008. For most of the time, it was open only to University of Missouri students. But last year, we decided to open it up to any college student in the country and also to offer a first prize of $10,000. One thing that's not new is that we always provide a common challenge for the student teams to work on. Often that challenge has involved new technology. But this year, we wanted to go further into the newsroom. This year's challenge is to help news organizations find new methods of engaging with their readers and viewers. Here's how it works. It's a two-part challenge. First, teams were asked to research a local news organization, could be TV, radio, print, weekly, hyperlocal, etc., and come up with a new way for them to engage with their community. Then, for the second part of the challenge, finalist teams had 3 months to implement their idea with the news outlet. Today, our judges and you, if you keep your Zoom fired up, will hear about the engagement strategy, the implementation, and what each team learned and recommends going forward. Okay, now it's time to introduce the person who has been overseeing the many moving parts of this year's competition, RJI's Director of Innovation, Kat Duncan. Kat will be your master of ceremonies today. And I'm looking forward to watching the presentation, Kat, so take it away.
Thanks, Randy. I'm excited for all of you to see the 10 teams presenting today. For the last 3 months, they have been working really hard with their newsrooms on their engagement projects. Each team will have 10 minutes to present and then 10 minutes to take questions from our judges. And now to introduce our judges. Adriana Lacey from Axios. Forrest Milburn from the Miami Herald. Hannah Wise from the New York Times. And Julia Chan from KQED News. Thank you all for your time being here with us today. We're really excited to hear your questions for each of our teams. These judges will be looking at several criteria, including how well the idea helped the newsroom and the community, how well it was implemented, and if the idea was new and innovative for that partner newsroom. So first up, we will have the People's Podcast. I think you're all here, so please let us know when you are ready to present.
Thank you, Kathleen. We are ready, and I will share my screen right now.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. We are the People's Podcast. Sorry, let me just start at the beginning. We are the People's Podcast in New York City. Our team is myself, Lee Carter, Sarah Anderson, and Wakas Ahmed. Our partner is FAQ NYC, a weekly news podcast focusing on local politics. Currently, FAQ is closely following the mayor's race in New York, a very crowded field. They have been interviewing each of the 20 candidates on the podcast, starting with Andrew Yang. After lengthy discussions with FAQ, we determined that their essential challenge is to receive feedback from their audience. There simply is no listener participation in a traditional linear news podcast. Our solution was to create a sustainable system that would bring a diverse range of voices to the podcast and create a special segment at the end of FAQ's podcast called the People's Podcast.
We wanted this segment to resonate with FAQ's listeners, so we wanted to connect with them and we wanted to let them decide what we should cover. So we agreed on a prompt: what New York City do you want covered? And in order to be able to receive those vocal contributions, which was a very important part of our plan, we opened a phone line with a phone number, and we released the call to actions first on the podcast. So Harry Siegel released the call to action on air, and then we went on social media. And we expected engagement. Unfortunately, we received 0 voicemail. So we sat together and we reflected on the problem. We identified a couple of things. First of all, we went through the data analytics and we realized that the FAQ had a very small audience, and therefore it was very hard to expect robust participation from them. And then we asked for feedback about our call to action, and people said it was too vague and not very engaging. And last thing, we were not providing them with any example. So it's really hard to get people on board when you do not know what it will actually look like or sound like. So we needed to pivot.
So one option in front of us was that we could boost our content on Facebook and Twitter. We could spend some money and increase its reach. But we realized that the reach was not the problem. A lot of local news outlets have small reach, but they need to have more engagement. That was the problem in front of us. So it was not about how many people that we reach, it's about how we engage even with the people, like smaller audience that we are already reaching. We also realized another thing, that we were defining our audience in a very narrow way. Our audience could have been much bigger. We were defining our audiences as people who already listen to FAQs podcast or people who already follow them on social media. But our potential audience was whole of New York who could benefit from FAQs content and all the things that they were doing. So we decided to go out and meet New Yorkers where they were. We decided to go in the parks, we decided to go to malls, and we decided to engage all the potential audiences and bring them into our loop and try to engage them. We we made specific questions about the issues that were close to people's hearts. And we interviewed dozens of people. We put those interview clips on social media. We put them on Facebook, we put on Twitter, and we started seeing engagement. We started seeing comments pouring in. And this started a conversation with the audience that already existed. We conducted dozens of interviews. And one amazing thing happened this time round was we started receiving phone calls that didn't happen in our previous iteration. So with those phone calls and with those interviews, we were able to produce first 9-minute episode on air. And we incorporated that episode in FAQ's existing podcast. And then that set the ball rolling and conversation started on other platforms too. So we learned an important lesson from this whole cycle of engagement. First, we opened a communication channel. We asked for call to action. People did not respond. We changed our strategy because of lack of engagement, and we engaged people where they were. And from that, people started seeing value in that engagement. And then they started coming back to us. They started sending their phone messages.
And now we would like to present a short sample of People's Podcast, some episodes that actually ran, introduced by Harry Siegel.
You're going to hear from the people of the People's Podcast who went out and talked to man on the street, women on the street, people on the street.
I love New York, yeah.
Capital of the world.
It's just so diverse.
You're listening to the People's Podcast. In Diane Morales' interview with FAQ, she proposed extending the public education system from K-12 to K-16.
I think that's a good idea.
If they could do it like in other developed countries overseas, then why not here, right?
I don't think it would be smart to give somebody who has access to like $100,000 adjusted gross income to free college. Like, that's not cost effective for the city.
I think we should have like a program thinking about the immigrants also, like people who want to come here to study in the United States.
Should maybe set up a plan to do it over time, so that way when new mayors come in, that plan can't change, make it permanent.
It depends what the education is like and stuff like that. I would want it to be well funded for sure, because when something's free, sometimes they kind of brush it off to the side and they let it dilapidate.
So as a conclusion, here are some advice that we wanted to share with you. First of all, basic equipment is essential and sound matters very much in podcasts. Then the podcast platforms are very limited in terms of engagement, so use as many channels as you can. Also, call to actions are just, it's way more easier to engage with when they are specific and when they resonate with your experience and your emotions. Then we would advise to pave the way for them to engage by providing them an example and by showing them the outcome of their contribution, then to meet them where they are, and eventually to drive them on platform by promoting your content.
Thank you very much for listening to the People's Podcast.
Thank you so much. So now, judges, we are going to go to you for questions. Hannah, would you like to start? Do you have any questions for this team about their project?
Yeah, can you tell me more about the in-person engagement you did? And I imagine this is quite unique during the pandemic, but if there was any challenges that you found with that, people, I moved from New York to Kansas City, and so I can only imagine people telling you that they do not have the time to talk to you. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Right. So we had two challenges. Yeah, the first was how to meet in person, and then the cold. So we were trying to figure out where we could meet them in a safe environment where they would be available and they could be able to chat with us. And so we started by going to the parks because it was where we could meet safely, and then we also got some equipment to be able to get their voices and to interview them from a safe from a distance. And we were surprised because since we were engaging with New York City, and a lot of people do have an opinion about how they want the city to come back to life, and by engaging them with a topic as the mayor race was actually, it was a better way to get engagement from them on a topic that they care about.
One thing that I also noticed as someone who's not from New York, if you ask people specific questions about issues that are close to their heart, they really want to talk about that. They really want to engage if you ask them about politics and things that they feel strongly about. So we found them very receptive.
Great, thank you.
All right, Julia, any questions from you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Curious to hear, when you're developing outreach plans, what are you thinking about in terms of wanting to ensure that you're setting yourselves up to reach a wider swath of people in order to achieve like a diversity of voices?
So one thing that we figured out after we set into a roadblock was that we were defining our audience too narrowly, and we had to completely redefine our audience. If we had stuck to people who are already listening to the podcast, we'd stay like in the same circle of people who were not diversified, in the same kind of people who already listen to the thing. So we redefined our audience, and from that we tried to engage more people and not just people who were already tuned in. So that was one way to do that, to radically redefine the audience.
And we also went to meet in person in neighborhoods in New York City where we could expect to have a variety of audiences, which we couldn't have on the podcast at first.
And also, I would say that it was very important for us to learn that that our question in the beginning was too broad. But if we got specific with our questions and went straight to the people out on the streets, they were very happy to answer our specific questions, especially when we asked how it related to their own personal experiences. Then they were eager to talk to us.
So some of the questions, for instance, were related to reforming the NYPD or providing education for free or a vaccination strategy. It was always questions that were related to the previous episode so that we were able to create a connection between the podcast and the people that we were meeting.
All right. Any other questions, Julia?
No, I'll let the other judges go.
All right. Adriana, do you have any questions for this team?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for presenting. It was super interesting to hear more. I had a question kind of about kind of the pivoting that you all did, kind of when you realized, you know, the strategy wasn't working and decided to do something else. I was kind of curious to kind of what the time frame was, how long it kind of took you to kind of realize that maybe what you're doing wasn't working, and then kind of how you were able to kind of move to the next thing.
So I think it took us a month to, you know, like create a bumper, create a roadmap, to release the call to action, and first to agree on the call to action, and then to release the call to action. Then we waited a week. We released the same call to action to see if by repeating it we would drive engagement, but that wasn't happening. So after, I would say, 4 weeks of that, we met, and then it took us a week, and of course a week during which we talked a lot with FAQ. We heard from them, and after a week we were able to set this new strategy and to implement it.
We realized pretty quickly that our first attempt wasn't really working because there wasn't a huge audience that was built into their audience. So we were just getting no feedback in the beginning, and that's why we showed that big slide that said 0 voicemails, because that's exactly what happened. We got no response. So that's when we pivoted and we went straight out to the people.
And also I have to say that it took us a bit of time at first because there is very little data on podcast platforms. So this is one thing that we found very hard to navigate with, because you can actually only see how many downloads you have, but not really how long they listened, or if it was shared, or it's extremely hard to deal with those data. So it's also why we decided to multiply the channels as much as we could.
Great, thank you. And Forrest, do you have any questions for this team?
Yeah, so I wanted to say thanks for presenting. I guess my question was about, once you engaged folks for the People's Podcast, what did y'all do to kind of ensure that those people you engaged weren't like lost? Like, how did you ensure that they were more loyal listeners or followers, maybe on social or elsewhere?
What we wanted to achieve with those interviews was tell our audiences that this is how they could engage. They had no idea how, if we post a call to action, people wouldn't really know what's going to happen with their voices. And that because they were operating in the dark, the audiences, they didn't leave their voice messages. So what we set out to do with these interviews was give the community a sense of what is going to happen with their voices once they start engaging with us. And we did see that once we posted those audio clips, once we posted those episodes, we saw that people were more likely to talk to us, to get back to us, and they initiated those conversations themselves after seeing what we did with their interviews. So that's one thing that happened.
And so after meeting with those people in person, we received more voicemail via the phone line that we set up, and which was the success for us.
All right, thank you very much. Judges, any other questions? Wave at me otherwise. All right, thank you so much, the People's Podcast, for your presentation. Great work. Up next is Team College Park. Lauren, please come back in as a presenter.
Unknown caller.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry about that.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
All right, just tell me when you're ready.
I'm good. I can start sharing my screen.
All right, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. Hi. Let me just move this over. I'm Lauren Roche. I'm a junior at the University of Maryland, and I'm majoring in journalism with a double minor in law and business. And my partner newsroom is the College Park Here and Now, which is a very new local newspaper that we have here that just started its publication in May of 2020. So an overview of the challenge, as was mentioned before, is that students partner with local newsrooms to boost engagement and really reconnect with their audiences during a period of isolation. And we had 3 months to implement this initiative. So my big idea was to create a community art project with the words of College Park residents. And this is where we started. So over the last 3 months, when I kind of started this project, the steps seemed very simple. I was going to find a location and artist, which meant searching for a place to display our art installation, collect those responses and find ways to reach out to the community, and then put the project all together with the community, create that, and unveil it to everyone in this big, grand way. However, it turns out it wasn't that simple after all, especially in the midst of a pandemic. So here's kind of the step-by-step plan that we went through, or that I went through each month. So in November, my very first step was to meet with the mayor and gain approval for this project. So after exchanging multiple emails and phone calls back and forth, he really liked the idea and he approved of it. And he pitched that I meet with the Discovery District Working Group. So for those of you unfamiliar with what the Discovery District is, it is the center of academic research and economic achievement here in College Park. And it strengthens existing research partnerships, and it retains a pipeline of talent locally and offers more experiences for residents, faculty, staff, and students. And on my next slide, I have some photos that exemplify what this Discovery District looks like here in College Park. So as you can see, there's a lot of art, a lot of glass, and what I was envisioning with the newsroom has very similar, it would fit in very well here. So on the 12th of November, I met with the Discovery District Working Group, and they helped me really bounce off some ideas. We reworked some ideas of how the best way to go about this would be, and we also came up with some potential locations for where we could put the installation. So overall, a very helpful experience. In December, we decided to create a website specifically for this project. So what this would do was it would streamline the process. So I created this one-stop webpage for interested community members to read more about the Student Innovation Challenge, College Park Here and Now, and myself. That way they could put a face to the name. So the goals of my website, as I slightly mentioned before, were to allow community members to put the face to the name, to promote the project, and just make it really easy for people to submit responses. So if you click here, you should all be able to, oops, sorry about that. You should all be able to see the website. So it starts with my name and a little bit of an explanation of what we're doing. So we want
Lauren, we can't see the website. I think you need to stop sharing and reshare the website page.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
No, don't worry.
Can you now? Or no?
It says you're sharing, but I don't see the website.
Maybe. Okay, let's see. Well, I can describe the website, and if it comes up, it comes up. And if not, the URL is there for anyone who would like to look at it. But let me try one more time. Now, maybe.
Would it be easy to post a link to
I
the
can
chat?
definitely do that.
Awesome, thanks.
Of course. So let me get that in. I can put that in the chat. And then.
All right, great.
Perfect. And I'll try and share my screen again. Hopefully you'll be able to see the presentation again. Or can you not?
I am not seeing it yet. Judges, can you see it?
No, just a black screen.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
Okay, let me try and share my entire desktop and see if that makes a difference. And if not, I will figure out what to do next. Okay, anything or still no?
Yes, now we can see your desktop.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll go from here. So if you click on the URL, you will be taken, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, you will be taken to the webpage, which is a very one-stop website for anyone to find out more about the project and figure out how we're using their responses. So the question that we came up with was, what is important to you here and now? And we kind of reworked that into being a broader question of what does College Park mean to you here and now? So that's a transition we made throughout, but that's a very easy way for people to learn more and see some photos as well. So moving on, also in December, Mark Goodson, who's the managing editor of College Park Here and Now, put out an advertisement in the paper. And I have a paper copy of that here, but so it's much easier to see. There's a scan in right here of what our message was originally. So this is a message we put out in the community calendar section in December. And we invited members of the community to email their responses to me, but also as we started going through it, the website was a really easy way for people to submit their responses anonymously through a Google form. And we actually found that that was more successful than the email because people were able to submit anonymous responses. Going into January and February, I connected with an art teacher from a local high school here who was very interested in getting some of his art students involved with the project. But ultimately, we realized it's probably best to put off the construction of the actual art project until the coronavirus case numbers are down here in College Park. So we had to shift gears pretty quickly. And instead, we decided, how can we engage the community even if the in-person part of this project is on hold? And so that's when we decided to develop a digital project with all the responses that we collected. And here's what we came up with. So this is what the online spread normally looks like of the College Park Here and Now. And I took the responses and I put them into this format. We have a great picture that exemplifies community. And here are some of the responses that we collected. And going forward, the plan until we can get this, the physical construction up and rolling, we are going to continue and create these digital spreads that we can share with the community. So these are some of the responses that we got. So obviously you can see the responses ranged from some people put in longer stories and anecdotes, others put in just one-word responses. So it was a really great range that we saw. And so there's still so much work that we want to be done, and that's more than okay because we've really laid a great foundation here. So here are the pieces that we're still putting together. Since College Park Here Now is such a new publication, they are still working on building their social media and web presence. So their website launch is happening very soon. So once the website launch happens, we will be posting the digital form on the website for people to submit their responses to us, as well as the digital art projects, so people can continue to engage with us that way. And so then the goal is to, as soon as it's safe enough to do so, we will bring this art installation to life. We have currently there's construction of a new city hall being built in College Park where they're looking for new art to be placed. So we're hoping to be able to get our installation there potentially, and also have a news stand next to it that would be able to have people directly associate the two. And then lastly is reveal the project to the community. College Park is such a diverse and rich community filled with more than just students who go to the University of Maryland. And it's important to us to be able to share the project with the rest of the community when it is finished. And so the foundation that we built here is I connected with the paper and we came up with the idea to involve the community. We gained approval from the mayor. We created a form that made it very easy to collect responses. We found multiple location options, connected with local artists and local students interested in helping. And we found multiple paths for success in terms of digital art versus in-person art. And I will continue to build this relationship and work on this project long past today. And so even if the plans and the goals shifted, here's how I was able to measure the success. So we gained approval from the mayor, and this was really important to me. This is something I was a little bit nervous about going into. And once that happened, I felt like we had already had success. And then on top of that, we got engagement from community members. Because the paper is so new, there was not so much engagement yet. And so to be able to get so many responses come in and hear so many different thoughts and reasons that people find College Park to be special was really important to us. So in my opinion, that's 100% total success. And so if this were to be implemented in a national level, it is a very simple step-by-step process that can now be simple because of all the trial and error that we went through. So I would recommend a newsroom picks a question that has to do with their publication. So we picked what is important to you here and now, which shifted to what does College Park mean to you here and now. So that was a play on words on the name of the paper. So anything like that. Then create a response such as a Google form to collect responses. And then I really recommend designing a separate web page or a separate section of a website that the paper has just dedicated to the project so people can learn more about what it is. And then the next step is finding local artists to connect with. To me, this is one of the most important parts because it's all about just staying local and creating and fostering those relationships. And then I recommend creating a digital version of the project. Although that wasn't our initial plan, I'm really proud of that part of the project. And I think that that's boost engagement already. So definitely create a digital version. And then also something that we're looking to do in the future is hopefully to be able to create a volunteer form. So to be able to get volunteers from the community who want to help actually put together the physical art representation and then put it all together and do the big reveal. So thank you. And if you have any questions, but I also would like to thank all the people who've helped me. So that includes Kathleen and Mark Goodson, who's the managing editor, Vaughn Halsey, who's one of the art teachers who I connected with, the mayor of College Park, and then also the Discovery District Committee and the Philip Merrill College of Journalism. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, now we will go to questions from the judges. Forrest, would you like to go first this time? Do you have any questions for Lauren on her project?
Hi, yeah, thanks for presenting, Lauren. I guess my question, I hope you didn't kind of like explain this earlier, but was the paper copy of College Park Here Now, was that your only avenue to reach the readers, or were you able to use, or were there other options about like being able to reach readers to get submissions?
So yeah, we use the paper copy, and then as well, I made a push on the campus side of things to engage the community in terms of the digital form and like physically sending that out and getting that out there. And going forward, I've been thinking about it a lot because we are still in the midst of all of this. I'd really like to approach like local business owners and get it involved more directly. Everyone who lives in College Park gets a paper copy of this newspaper. So to be able to push the digital form though to local businesses, I think that will have a lot more success there as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Great. Julia, any questions for Lauren?
Sure. Hi, Lauren. Thanks for your presentation today. Yeah, I'm curious to hear how you're thinking about continuing to bridge the print product with the digital pieces of your engagement product. Other than, you know, a call and response, what are other ways that you're hoping to see the conversion across platforms happen?
Yeah, so really the big ultimate goal of this is that physical art installation. And I've spoken to many people in the community who are very excited about the potential of that coming to this community. And for me, the big part about bridging that gap, as opposed to just the call and response, like you were saying, is also having volunteers who can physically help us construct that. And then, as I mentioned before, the managing editor and I spoke about potentially having a newsstand next to the art installation once it's created. So it's that automatic association, like you see the mural, you know it's the College Park here now. And so to have that automatic association. And as I also mentioned, they're launching their website, the social media is getting up and running. So we're hoping to continue to boost engagement that way. I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to connect with a paper that is in such early stages, because I feel like this can kind of be incorporated into the foundation of it.
Great, thank you. Hannah, any questions for Lauren?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lauren. I love the idea of having engagement be sort of the foundation of an art installation, but I'd really like to hear more about how you're ensuring a diversity of voices, both in who you're hearing from and then who you're choosing to highlight in the installation. Especially a wall is finite space, so maybe you have ideas to make it more of a living installation that things can ebb and flow and change with the changing community, or maybe it's something more static. And so I'd love to hear how you're ensuring that diversity throughout this process.
Yeah, so as I just mentioned, reaching local businesses is where my head is at for going next. And so I think that will definitely help us continue to be able to collect those diverse voices, because College Park is made up of more than just college students. And that is so important to me to be able to continue to emphasize. And, you know, the families that live here are just as part of the community as the college students and the professors. So that is one way that I'm going to continue to collect those diverse voices. And to your next point, that is why I think the digital art project came in such a bonus of this project, because it doesn't have to be static, the digital version. So I'm planning on continuing to create as many digital spreads as I possibly can of these. And in terms of the physical art installation, I think it just kind of depends on how many responses we get, because the timeline is so indefinite right now, because we don't necessarily know when it will be safe for us to do so and create that project. I am open to doing whatever we can for that.
Great, thank you so much. And Adriana, do you have any questions for Lauren?
Hi, thanks so much for presenting. My question was actually Hannah's question, so I'm all good.
You're all good. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Lauren, for presenting. It was wonderful to see your presentation today. And next up is NYU Epicenter. Please join the space as panelists.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
All right, do we have everybody? It looks like it. All right, start whenever you're ready.
Okay, are you all seeing my screen?
We are.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. We are so happy to be here and so excited to be among the finalists. Thank you very much for this opportunity. We are a group of grad students from NYU Studio 20, program focused on innovation in journalism. And we come from 4 different countries and 4 different backgrounds. And this is our proposal. We wanted to create a reporting toolkit that could be used by any newsroom, especially a small one, that wants to improve reporting and engagement with its community. For this project, we chose to partner up with Epicenter and NYC, a newsletter created by Mitro Kalida, in the middle of the pandemic to serve the community of Jackson Heights, Queens, New York City. And we chose Epicenter firstly because it's a brand new media enterprise seeking to engage with its audience. That's a good challenge. Also, they're a newsletter, so that's a unique format to work with. And most important, they're a small local news organization with limited time, money, and resources. That's the focus of our project. Our goal here was to start a new communication channel and a communication and an engagement channel using the existing community resources. And for that purpose, we imagined a scalable tool to make the newsrooms closer to their audience. A toolkit that was inexpensive, flexible, and lightweight, so it could be used by a one-person newsroom, for example. Also, we wanted to report on the COVID impacts, and that's why we chose Jackson Heights, which was one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in New York City during the outbreak. And that's why the newsletter is called Epicenter, by the way. Jackson Heights is also one of the most diverse communities in New York City. It's a place that speaks over 160 languages. And we thought that a good way of reporting both on the COVID impacts and on the neighborhood diversity was to focus on Jackson Heights small business owners, like restaurants, for example. Many of them shut their doors permanently last year. We talked to those who didn't, and we wanted to know how they're getting along. This is what we did.
So our goal was to create a networked beat in the community by creating a chain. One small business owner would nominate the next, and that small business owner would nominate the next, and so on until we had created connective tissue in the community through those who had shared experiences but maybe didn't know it yet. So to give you a little background on what our processes were like, we would travel to Jackson Heights every week or every other week to meet up with a small business owner and ask them questions about their livelihoods and businesses and how they had been affected by the pandemic. Our frequent trips gave us the opportunity to explore Jackson Heights and the intersection of cultures, the languages, and the lifestyles that exist there. And when we connected with the small business owner, we would spend about 30 to 45 minutes getting to know them, understanding their story, and learning how each of them was keeping their businesses afloat. This process was also accompanied by photos and videos, which you see here. And afterwards, we would send edits of the text, videos, and photos back and forth with the Epicenter leadership. And consequently, the Small Business Spotlight was published in the Epicenter newsletter every other week between December and February. So the next step in our process is putting up posters around Jackson Heights of each small business owner near their place of work. So the QR code that you see leads back to the Epicenter homepage. And we wanted to do this to create a physical presence in the neighborhood, as well as increase engagement and awareness and possibly bring in new readers to the newsletter.
And as you can imagine, we faced some challenges during the implementation of this project. Since anyone in our team lives in Jackson Heights, we spent a huge amount of time accessing the community. We think this experience must be accomplished by journalists living in the communities or nearby because they are the ones who know better what's going on and how to address the challenges better. They can spend more time with people to produce more relevant stories. When we tried to get in touch with the small business owners, they didn't really have enough time to spend with us because they were too busy most of the time. So we think people should know the news outlet before so they can develop a close and durable relationship and thus be willing to contribute. Another challenge we faced was the price of the posters. It was basically impossible to find cheap posters. We only wanted 5 to 10 posters per week because we were understaffed. We were not able to print large quantities because to benefit lower cost. And for this project, we recommend working in partnership with a specific printing company to reduce the cost. And sorry, and this is the next step in our project. We have also realized that some small businesses owner couldn't recommend another business to maintain the daisy chain because they were not living in Jackson High community where they have their own businesses. We think that any news organization that want to implement such a project must expect that the chain can break somewhere. They will have to start with a new connection.
But when it came to looking back over the project and thinking what would help it moving forward, we didn't necessarily think that funding was the major concern outside of printing the posters. The project itself in practice really required no budget at all. It was just time and conversation. And so building a real network like this just takes community and trust, and you can't throw money to build trust. We think that if a newsroom just assigns at least one journalist to spend time within the community using this toolkit, we can increase the kind of spontaneous exchange that leads to great stories and a strengthened bond with the community. And we would recommend that we use this, that any newsroom uses this, no matter what size. The QR codes, for example, are becoming more widely used because of hygiene concerns during the pandemic. But we think by using them on simple posters that we can put out into the neighborhood, it creates a physical presence for the newsroom within the very streets that they're doing their reporting. And there's another issue that many local newsrooms have, which is limited time and resources. That's just money and people. And a simple little toolkit like this or a strategy, you can really use it 30, 45 minutes a week and find strong connections and build it going forward. It also puts the responsibility for these stories with the community themselves. They tell you who to talk to next. And so it creates a very organic growth of this network that we think would only strengthen the ties. So this community tool is simple, flexible, and efficient, and it can build a network organically. If we do this correctly, it will reveal networks that are already there and strengthen this bond even further.
So in the end, we actually had outcomes that we didn't predict that showed the strength of the network in this tool. We made really strong connections with a lot of the small business owners we talked to and kept in touch with them after to check in and see how they were doing. And the best outcome of this project was one that came about completely organically, as Alex mentioned. Our daisy chain actually inspired a new daisy chain, which was vaccine registrations. So the Epicenter is currently helping essential workers in Jackson Heights get registered for COVID-19 vaccines, which is a process that we all know is extremely confusing, difficult, and time-consuming. And so initially we got in touch with Manjeet from Jackson Diner and offered to help get his staff registered for a vaccine. And we ended up getting his entire restaurant as well as his immediate family vaccinated, as reported here in the New York Times. And the word that staff from the Jackson Diner had gotten vaccinated through the Epicenter spread and set off many more restaurants to sign up through the Epicenter portal. Word also spread to the taxi cab community, who also approached the Epicenter to get them vaccinated too. So as of today, the Epicenter's efforts have helped get over 200 people in Queens vaccinated for COVID-19. So in conclusion, this toolkit has the ability to generate incredible stories, new projects, and unexpected outcomes. We definitely could not have anticipated where this project was going to lead us, but we're excited to see where it goes next. And thank you so much, RJI and the judges, for having us. Thank you to Kathleen for your guidance throughout this process, and thank you to Mitra and the Epicenter team for working with us these last few months.
All right, great work. Let's go to our judges. Adriana, do you want to start this time?
Sure. Thanks so much for presenting. That was a really interesting presentation. I just kind of had a question kind of about the participation and kind of outreach section. Did you kind of have any issues with maybe like cultural or language barriers? I know you kind of talked about, you know, how diverse Jackson Heights is, and I was just curious if that was something that ever came up.
Yes, that definitely did present a few issues. But I think when you start to ask people about their backgrounds and their stories, and you start making connections, like there's a communication, a universal communication that takes place. Language was definitely sometimes a barrier, but we made sure to spend a lot of time if we had questions and needed clarity with each small business owner. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what we did after each interview, we kept contact with those people. So if we had additional question, if we need to write down their name correctly, if we have anything, we wrote them and have the answers back.
Great. Hannah, do you have any questions for this team?
Yeah, I do. I love the idea of a daisy chain and this network effect. But I'd love to hear about anything that you're doing to guard against either confirmation bias or groupthink within the network. I'm thinking it's a lot easier in New York. Jackson Heights is so inherently diverse that you're going to see people from all over. But I think about scaling this to some communities in the Midwest, especially that maybe are more homogeneous, and it's harder for where there is this difficulty of people in the network themselves not reaching out outside of their network. So how can you as a journalist connect maybe two disparate networks together in a larger chain?
Yeah, and we thought about this, and Ralph alluded to what happens when the chain breaks. And it's actually an opportunity for to deep thinking about what exactly the network is. And we had some of the people that we profiled, they didn't live within the community, they only worked within it. So they didn't necessarily know their neighbors. They weren't friendly with them. And actually they looked at them kind of as their competitors. And they were from a different region doing a different thing, but they were similar because of geographic location, and they were both doing restaurants. So we actually had a chain that wasn't built off of affinity, it was built off of a clash already. So we went to the other side of the street and spoke to somebody who actually the guy doesn't really know and is maybe taking people away, even though one is a very different type of food.
Also, that was the cohort that we chose, but ideally this could be used by, it could be applicable to any community that wants or needs to bond or to be more connected. So actually, when in our case, when a small business owner nominates another one, they're creating a sense of connection and engagement between each other. So the whole purpose of this of our project was not only to engage the newsroom with the community, but to engage the community itself. So create two chains of connection at the same time. And of course, this is just the beginning, but it could be implemented in a bigger way in any kind of community, any kind of group that needs to talk to each other and to share experiences in some way.
All right, great. Forrest, any questions from you?
Yeah, thanks all so much for presenting. I just want to say I love the idea of the posters. Whoever made those, they were designed very well. So props to you. I also really like the idea of just the focus on in-person engagement and being an in-person presence with the community. I also like how y'all defined the community itself, like not necessarily, because there's many different ways to define community. It's not just who necessarily lives in the neighborhoods, but also who works there. I was curious, as y'all were talking, I was really curious, like, did y'all ever consider making like a Facebook group or any kind of like close-knit online community where this daisy chain could communicate with each other further, maybe even like sharing resources, especially during like the pandemic and even beyond?
Okay, one of the things that we imagined when we were designing that project, we were thinking what to do next once we have built that huge chain. And we had many options, and one of them was to gather people in one place so they can share the experience from what we've done with Epicenter. So for now, we must understand that we are at the beginning of that project, and COVID-19 has halted many of our options since it was basically impossible to gather people in the same place. So definitely building a group with all those people is, we can consider that, but we must see the result. We must take time to see the future result before.
For us, we definitely have a lot of room for expanding ways of connecting this community. Not only through Facebook groups or virtual means, but also physical gatherings when that's possible. The thing with the small business owners is that they have been so busy in the last months because they are trying to get a living out of the pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic. So they are a community with a specific with some specific needs, and we are discovering what are their needs and their situation, their circumstances they can offer to us. But of course, we could apply that, as I said, to any community that needs to be connected, and that could be done through many ways that the community finds useful to them. And of course, the newsroom could foster these gatherings, like panels, seminars, or something. So let's create an event to talk about how small business owners can cope better with COVID limitations, COVID restrictions. So of course, we have room for expanding in many ways and in many directions.
Great, thank you. And Julia, any questions from you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to walk us through your project. So I love this idea of the daisy chain being this lightweight toolkit that you're able to share with others in order to have them, really make it make sense as it's manageable to one person or entire team. And I think it really speaks to developing a tool. Sorry, there's sirens going by. Developing a tool with a community with their input. So I love that. So I want to kind of hear a little bit more about what happened before that, because I think it might be informative as you're, talking about the toolkit with others, evangelizing it. What was your decision-making process like when choosing which small businesses to reach out to in the beginning and subsequently interview? I think that might, that kickstarting portion of this, I think would be fascinating to hear more about.
So Mitra, who runs the newsletter, she's a resident of Jackson Heights. She's lived there for a very long time. And so we did actually have a really in-depth discussion with her about who we should start with. Because there's so many restaurants, so many small business owners, so many possibilities. And we actually just landed on Angel Indian Restaurant because it was one that she knows well. Her and her husband are, in touch with the manager there. And so that connection in itself, I think, was a really good place to start. And then from there, Angel recommended another restaurant and another one. So it was really just, I think we needed that initial connection in the community that Mitra already has, being a resident. And this newsletter is like her baby. She cares so much about Jackson Heights. And so yeah, we worked with her initially to kind of figure out who we should start with, and then it kind of went on from there.
And we were very conscious of because neither of us live within Jackson Heights, it was a good opportunity to experiment with how to get over the parachute journalism problem, which we are all trying to resolve in our ways, right? And I think finding ambassadors within the community who could help to steer the story was really important. But the issue with ambassadors is that they are often the most vocal. So we wanted to find people who were representative in different ways. And I think affinity or just somebody that you notice, that is often a connection enough. And just we would kind of, when we were talking with one partner and figuring out who they were going to send us on to, we could guide it in a little way to try and find those people who they wouldn't necessarily think of as ambassadors, but who were in their own right amazing resources for the community.
All right, well, thank you so much, Team NYU. We appreciate your presentation and your time. Team Mag Class Heroes, you are next. And I believe Hannah is already in the room, so let me know when you are ready.
Should I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sure. It is. Okay, and then present. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hannah Martin, and I am a senior studying magazine at the Newhouse School at Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York. So, of course, as everyone else has mentioned, the challenge for this competition was so many papers are struggling right now. I have all of these clips up about how newsrooms can't survive the COVID-19 pandemic. And so for the project, we had to, my magazine class had to submit a proposal as part of a class assignment, but I actually was really excited about this because I actually have two other majors, and one of them is citizenship and civic engagement. And so I'm really interested in a lot of this audience engagement work. And so I gave a journalism workshop pitch to Ashley Kang from The Stand, which is our partner paper that we're working with. And it's a small South Side newspaper that covers the South Side of Syracuse, of course. And the goal is to really help the community reclaim their voice and share their own stories. And so as a class, we worked under the mission of The Stand to revise the pitch into a writing competition. So I'm not going to read all these prompts out, but these were the first three original prompts. We wanted three just to give some variety. So I said, the coronavirus pandemic, how does your routine look different? And then your favorite memory. And then the last one was kind of like a community takeover, community highlights, interviewing somebody in your community and why are they special? What did you learn from them, etc. So this project would benefit the Southside schools, but not only the schools, it benefited the community first of all, because The Stand was getting, they were having a lot of trouble getting Southside voices in the coverage. And so it also encouraged the children to write, which then the parents would read because everyone wants to read their kids' published works and the teachers will read it. So it really that outreach and the branching out of the effect. And then the paper, it'll include more community voices. And as I said, family and friends will become winners will become readers. And the teachers have also been struggling with engaging their students. Both of my parents are high school teachers, and they've had a lot of trouble getting kids engaged with Zoom class. So I originally thought that these three schools, I was under the impression that they were all in the South Side, and I didn't want it to be too overwhelming. So I was like, okay, let's stick with three schools. Well, we had a couple of challenges. So my first challenge was that I was a little bit geographically confused. So this is Corcoran High School, this is Brighton Academy, and this is Clary Middle School down there in the South. And Clary, as you can see, is not in the South Side of Syracuse. So that was my first issue. But then Ashley Kang from The Stand, who I worked with throughout the entire process, suggested that I open the competition to all grades in schools, not just Syracuse City School District. She's like, why are you just doing middle and high school? Like the elementary kids might have something to say too, which we got some great elementary submissions. So I was really appreciative of that suggestion. So these are just all the Syracuse schools. And so the second challenge was that we had too many prompts. My professor suggested that I talk to Rhonda Zajac, who is the director of English for the Syracuse City School District. And she suggested a whole bunch of things, whole laundry list. The first thing is that one prompt is easier to judge. It's so hard to judge between 3 different topics. And so this provided more consistency. And I also went, I had 3 prompts to start with because I thought that the stand published monthly, and the stand does not publish monthly, and so 3 prompts were too many. I was originally going to have like 3 competitions, and it was a little ambitious. And so then I had to figure out the specific dates of when things were due, when the print deadline was, devise a rubric for judging so that it's consistent all across the board with our judging efforts, create a promotional flyer to get the word out, decide how many winners I needed for each category. And then she needed me to write an email so that she could send it out to the whole Syracuse City School District community. So as you can see, she was very instrumental in this project in developing the prompts themselves. And so challenge accepted. I created this pamphlet to give out, and Ashley Kang from the stand posted it, and that's actually where I got a lot of my submissions, that outreach. And so I made these 4 age categories and graded entries on if they were on topic or if they were a personal narrative, their originality, their grammar and spelling. And I understand younger students might not be so great at this, so it was just basic knowledge, and then their organization, well thought out and composed. And so the third challenge was who will submit. I needed incentives for students to submit because, as you know, it's hard to get kids to do anything. And so I didn't hear back from a lot of businesses, but 3 local businesses, Wegmans and the Rosamond Gifford Zoo, and then Syracuse Stage, which is a drama organization. Those were the ones that I heard back from. And so those will be 3 prizes that I'll give to the older winners. And so in some, with my little road bumps, I just wasn't quite specific enough in my proposal, and that's okay, things change. So additionally, each student who participates will receive this cute little notebook and pen set, and then I ordered these stickers with the stand's logo to put on them. And so the exciting part was receiving the submissions. I made this other flyer because I was asked for the deadline to be extended. I actually put some of that wiggle room in there. So I extended it from the 15th to January 17th for submissions to be due because the print deadline of the stand was the 25th. I categorized the submissions into different Google Docs for easier judging. And so younger students actually gave me art and voice messages, which turned out better because then I had some multimedia in there. And I realized that I needed clear guidelines in calling for submissions because a lot of students didn't include their grade, which made judging really hard, and some didn't even put their name. So clear guidelines. And so these are all the entries I got. As you can see, 3rd to 5th grade was super popular. So I'm really happy I opened it up to those age categories. And so in total, I had 87 entries, and I was absolutely thrilled with this outcome. I was like bouncing in my chair. So even 7 from the high school. So I was very happy with it. And so I had this judging team of some people from the stand, and we divided the work up, and I evaluated the 3rd to 5th category, which of course was the biggest. And so we just to make it easy, because we got so many submissions, we ranked them from 1 to 3, worst to best, like 1, no, 2, it has a fighting chance, and 3, yes, this should be published, and then selected the winners. And so this is the result. The next step is to retrieve and deliver the prizes. I've had trouble having access to a car to get the prizes, and Syracuse doesn't have the best public transportation. So this is actually, I have a physical copy of the stand. This is the February issue, and it is printed in there, but as you can see, but for just clarity of seeing, I put it on here, the digital copy version. And as you can see, this is like the kindergarten entry. I was so happy that they submitted drawings. I was so impressed with this one, as a 5-year-old did it. And the COVID-19, COVID stinks. So we decided to just publish all of the early elementary entries because we only got a few, well, not all the kindergarten, we got quite a few of those, but we only got the 2nd graders. And then the middle school and the high school. And then the high school winner was actually a poem that I really liked. And then they posted a little behind the scenes about the competition, about RJI and everything. So here's a couple in their words, in the students' words. I just wanted to pull some of these quotes to read. You can't go to your friends' homes if you wanted to have a sleepover. Time to unfriend COVID-19 because it stinks. Isabella, 2nd grade. Getting off the highway, there used to be a car shop and now it is just dirt. I think this building got knocked down because the business wasn't making any money. Willow, 4th grade. And now I don't know what's going to happen. Things could get better, things could get worse, but the one thing I know is that no matter what, we are here for each other. We can't go back to how things used to be, but we can remember how it was. We can't bring people back, but we can hold them close in our hearts. And that was from Raylan in 8th grade. That was a very impressive essay. So nationally implementing this would be pretty easy. It's as long as you have a contact person between the local media business and the schools. Maybe that would be like a new position, maybe somebody within the media or the schools would be able to do that. Ideally somebody who works at the paper, but of course papers have quite small staffs sometimes. So ideally it would be somebody in the school. And it would really have to require like a partnership program. Like that's what I'm really trying to stress, that they needed some type of point person. And I think that this could also be expanded to visual journalism. I was just very excited to get kids excited about writing. But I definitely think that it would be nice because then they'll be on TV, and who doesn't want to be on TV? So that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Wonderful, thank you. All right, Julia, would you like to go first this time?
Sure. Hi, Hannah. Thanks so much for your presentation. I actually did want to hear more about what the user response journey was like. I think historically, and I might be thinking about this wrong, historically, the conversion from any print product to a digital platform hasn't been very good, but you received a lot of submissions and it looks like it was a mix of media. It sounds like you might have gotten voicemails, some drawings, writing. So kind of wanted to hear what was that pathway? It sounds like there were maybe several. I might have some follow-up questions, but I would love to hear that part first.
Sure. Yeah, I am so happy you asked that. I just didn't have the time to flesh it out. So it was chaotic in one word at first, because I just got all of these submissions. I set up a separate email, the standcontest@gmail.com, so I didn't have to worry about my own inbox being bombarded. But I did get like teachers calling with questions, some voice messages. Actually all of the entries came into that inbox. And then I made tags on the Google, K to 2nd, 3rd to 5th, high school, middle school, so that like I could folder sort them into different inboxes. But it was kind of chaotic sometimes, especially because, like, as I said, sometimes kids didn't include their name, they didn't include their grade, they didn't include their school, and because it's age categories, like how are you going to judge that? So I just had to ask them and they responded, luckily. But yeah, I'm like looking at the inbox right now and it's definitely a little messy for sure. But I just used those organization skills that I learned from college and put them to good use.
So having gotten 87 responses, do you know how that compares to the distribution number of the paper?
So that I'm not exactly sure. I do know that the paper is just, it's a free paper. And so it's just distributed all over Syracuse. That's why it's kind of like hard to track down. I actually picked this one up in our journalism school. There was just a bunch laying on a bench. So it's kind of hard to gauge that one just because it is free and out there.
All right, thank you so much. Adriana, you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks so much for presenting. I was kind of curious, kind of talking more about kind of your judging process. I was just kind of curious, did you find it hard to kind of judge over like different mediums, like with like, the digital submissions as well as like the text and the poetry and things?
Yeah, so that was actually one of my major concerns at the beginning. I was really hoping that everyone would turn in personal narrative, and that's why like the K to 2nd was especially difficult. I personally was a little bit worried about it, but it actually turned out better because so all of the kindergartners submitted artwork, and then I think 4 of them submitted voice text in to accompany their artwork because not all of them are writing. And I actually had a teacher ask me, hey, like, can we do interview format? And I was thinking, oh gosh. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, like that works. Like you got to just adapt with it and be flexible and go with it. And so luckily it didn't cause too big of an issue because the kindergarten entries were all art. And then most people did personal essays. I think there was that one poem in high school, but I was just so impressed by it. It just gave me chills. So I couldn't not publish that. But yeah, thank you for asking that.
Great. Hannah, do you have any questions?
Thank you so much, Hannah, for speaking with us and sharing. But Julia and Adriana asked my questions, so thank you.
All right. Forrest, do you have any questions?
Hey, Hannah, thanks so much for presenting. I guess my question was, can you talk a little bit more about like, what was the response from teachers and parents? Like what kind of like feedback maybe did they give you on like what worked for them on their perspective? And like, what did they see in their kids? Like, I don't know, like how excited were the kids to be a part of this? How excited were they to write and maybe do kind of like auxiliary things in the future? Like what was their kind of like response?
Yeah, so that was my favorite part of the whole project. The students and the teachers and the parents all came in with force, super excited. I know that I was super happy that I keep saying this, but that I opened it to elementary because I just got this call from this teacher and she said, you know, I think this could really be a positive impact on a lot of my kindergarteners. Like a lot of my kindergarteners are super excited, like, and just like thinking about those kids getting excited about being published. Like I didn't even need prizes. The incentive was getting published. And I just felt really good to get them excited about writing. So yeah, there was, I didn't really get any feedback per se, except that everyone was really excited to be part of the competition and just to be published.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you.
All right, next, the Fantastic Two. And you guys just let me know when you feel ready to share.
I think we're good.
All right, go ahead.
Hello, we are the Fantastic Two, and our project is Lemonade News Resources. My name is Laura Solari, and I'm a doctoral student at the Missouri School of Journalism.
Hi, my name is Indah Setiawati. I'm also a doctoral student at the Missouri School of Journalism. Our partner newsroom here, Missouri Business Alert, is a digital newsroom that provides top business news from across the state of Missouri. Their audience are entrepreneurs and people who care about business news. Meet Michael, the managing editor, Laura, the director of marketing, and Annabelle and Megan are students who become the social media managers. So Michael and Laura, they have provided an amazing support and mentorship during this project. This is a full collaboration between Fantastic Two and Missouri Business Alert. And we believe that if this project is successfully implemented in a small newsroom, then it will be easily implemented in other newsrooms.
So Inda and I were really excited about this competition. We are both researching ideas to help newsrooms. And as former and current journalists, we know firsthand the challenges that newsrooms are facing, whether it's people quitting the business, low news trust due to fake news, or smaller staffs. The other thing that we wanted to do was make sure that we partnered with a business journal because we were really excited about helping not only a struggling newsroom engage with their audience, but also businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic. And so we met with the Missouri Business Alert. And one of the interesting things about their newsroom is that they only have 2 full-time staff and they employ journalists. Additionally, they're a digitally minded publication and they're seeking more traffic to their website while having a very successful daily newsletter. And so through talking to them and doing social media audits of their online presence, we found that their Instagram needed some help. It has the highest non-paid engagement rate and also allows for local tagging and hyper-local hashtags. Additionally, they only had 204 followers, which is a big, that is a big discrepancy compared to their other followings.
So after talking with Michael and Laura, we pitched an idea of a user-generated content design that can generate traffic to the MBA website. And then we also, we created a new series for their Instagram. It's called Lesson Learned. So we would invite business owners across the state of Missouri to complete a survey that we will use as a content. We collected the survey with Qualtrics, and then when we publish it into our Instagram stories, we highlight only their direct quotes. So you can see here the direct quotes of Shanequa. She is an owner of a preschool in Jefferson City, and then her story is also published on our website. So we created also an action to call in the Instagram story. And then here you can see how our survey looks. We had the guest contributors are the business owners. They give us their bios, what's the best time to contact them if we have more questions, or we'll do more an interview. And then they can also choose between text and videos. And there are only 4 questions, like what are the circumstances that made them started their business, how they started their business, what's the biggest challenge that they have ever faced, and then what lessons that they can share to other entrepreneurs. On the back, they can also contact Michael if they have more questions, and they can also check the published stories that we have done. And here I will show you how it looks on the Instagram stories. So we put the picture first of the business owners. This is Adrienne. She has a new architecture firm, and then she told us the story. We can see her strongest quotes here. It's like a short version of what she submitted to us. And then on the very back, there is a call to action so that the readers, the audience can go to the website to read the longer version of the story. The lessons that we learned from our project here is that email outreach is the best way to engage with our community. So we put a call to action in our email. This is like the links. We provided the links that they can click to see the published stories. And then we also tell them that, you know, there is no cost in participating in this project, and that is super important for them. And then we also provided a guide on the photo submission, because otherwise they would, you know, submit selfie photos. And then we also wanted to make sure that we have an inclusivity in this project. We reach out to 900 businesses through emails, and then we also purposefully emailed Black-owned business owners and Asian business associations to ensure that we have the diversity in Missouri.
All right, so what is this story so far? I think I am zoomed in a little bit. Oh. Is it look zoomed in for you? Oh gosh, just a second. Oh, it looks good now. Okay, perfect. So what is this story so far? We consider this a successful collaboration between a newsroom and a community. So far, we have over 53 business owners and about 30 more that still need photos or additional information. Additionally, after just the first highlight, there was a 200% engagement increase on Instagram. And in the last month, there's over 1,000% increase on their Instagram account. And so what is this doing for the Missouri Business Alert? They are reaching a new audience, and they are increasing the traffic to their website. Additionally, we wanted this to be a replicable project. And so we created guides for when those journalists that are working on this project with us now graduate, if they want to do this again in the future, how do they do that? And is there a way to make sure that this information is stored for newsrooms to come? And so we created lemonadenewsresources.com. I would encourage you all to go there now. And the story of Lemonade News Resources is that society has given newsrooms a lot of lemons. You know, the news trust is down, audiences have changed, the way that they get their news has changed, and so we need to change and reach them where they are. And so we created these guides with the Missouri Business Alert. And if you click on one, it will take you to a Google Doc, which explains how to make a copy for your own newsroom, what the project was, why we did it, and the steps that we went through, and how successful it was. And so we encourage you to explore Lemonade News resources. And if you click guides, if you're a student watching this and you want to help participate with this website, you can go to guides and you can submit your own engagement project so that other newsrooms across the country can do this. And so here's our current work. And then if we have funding, we'd like to include guides for early adopter things that newsrooms can do to get ahead of the curve instead of always trying to play catch up. Additionally, we want to also highlight the Missouri method. Students that learn how to do this while they're still journalists will then take what they've learned at the Missouri Business Alert and it will travel all over the country. And so our project not only has an impact now for one small newsroom, but hopefully will have a lasting impact going forward. And so please consider visiting our website and contributing information that you might have that could help someone else.
Inda, you are muted. We can't hear you. You're Hi, Inda, you were muted. We couldn't hear the end of that.
Sorry, did you not hear me?
No.
Yeah, I just said that we would like to thank Missouri Business Alert for allowing us into their newsroom, and then we also would like to thank the local businesses that participated in this survey.
All right.
Yeah, we now welcome the questions from the judges.
All right. Okay, Julia, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you so much for taking the time to give this presentation. Excited to dig in further. It was interesting to see your measures of success. And I think based on that, if you were to continue on this project with the Business Alert, how would you iterate the project itself? And based on like if the measures of success were a spike in engagement on Instagram and increase to traffic, I'm curious if you would stay with those two goals, create new ones, and then how you would iterate the project to get us there.
Of course. Will you mute here? Thanks. So the thing with the this project in particular is that you have to start with an Instagram audit. So every month, the Missouri Business Alert generates a social media audit with their key performance indicators and what their goals are. And so we're going to continue working with the Missouri Business Alert. And so we are going to establish goals that are reasonable for their organization. So the first thing in creating user-generated content is developing your success metrics and what you're going to measure success by. For this project, they wanted to increase their engagement on Instagram, and so those were the success metrics. If we were to continue doing this project, it would be things like their followers on their newsletter. So maybe they have different sections on their newsletter, like one is here, see like things to listen to, like their podcast. And so you would just reiterate on this project with different topics, and those different topics would have different KPIs.
I can also add to that. Thank you for the question, Julia. So one of the things that we learned along the way is that not all business owners are comfortable with writing, with submitting what they have learned as an individual and as a professional through a writing to text or even through audio and videos, like they might not be have an experience of just talking in front of their videos, like an influencer, for example. So we learned that we have to provide an interview with them. So if going forward with this project, if we continue working with Missouri Business Alert, then I would go back to business owners who didn't finish submitting their interviews. Maybe they finished their bios, but then they didn't submit any text. Then I will go back to them, and then I will offer an interview to them, because we also interviewed some business owners, and one of them told me that I'm not comfortable with text at all, and it turned out that he had a dyslexia. So, and then also there are business owners from international community that are not comfortable in, either speaking in English or talking or submitting a text. So an interview will definitely help them much in telling their stories. And then we also would like to develop the content, because we collected like rich content into a podcast. So an interview will also become an opportunity for them, for Missouri Business Alert to have content for their podcast.
And before Inda sells herself short, she also talked to one business owner who had never interacted with the Business Journal or the Business Alert at all. And would you talk more about reaching, one metric of success is reaching businesses that have never interacted with the Business Alert before. And so really reaching new audiences, especially in a digital format.
Yeah, so well, one of the business owners that I interviewed, he never had any interviews before. And then he also never, he didn't know about Missouri Business Alerts. So it's helpful for him to know that there is a resource like, a newsletter, and Missouri Business Alerts also, updated their readers, their newsletters, followers about, events, business events, and then helps in the community that can help business owners. So in a way, we also, reach out to new audience for Missouri Business Alert. And you can see from their followers, spike up after just like, the first highlights. And right now we already published 4 business owners so far. And we still have 53 others on the pipeline. So it's like a rich content.
One quick follow-up question. Were there any outcomes that you weren't expecting that might perhaps reveal opportunities for the Business Alert?
I'll go ahead and take that. So one thing that I thought was really interesting is that they were not using social media scheduling software to its full extent. And so one thing that this project really highlighted is that it's a lot easier with 2 people or 1 social media manager for a whole newsroom to handle evergreen content for the year and really free up manpower and hours for the content itself. So there were some stories of business owners who had overcome really difficult hardships. And those are things that you want to do really in-depth stories on, but you don't have the manpower to get it. And so I think that that was one really interesting thing to me, is that because staffs are so small, they're missing out on good content. And so developing content capturing mechanisms is really important for newspapers, small newspapers, and specialty news organizations. And I think that another thing for me that was really surprising is that small business owners want to interact in Missouri. It's a rural community. And when we started working with the MBA, they were hosting the Kindness Awards, which they partnered with a local nonprofit, and they were nominating businesses for things that they had done that were really kind in the community. And so by doing projects like this, we amplify the things that they're already doing to engage. And a lot of these people didn't even know that the Missouri Business Alert had social media. They used the newsletter and they went to the website, but they're like, oh yeah, of course I'll follow. That was a lovely post that you did about the monarch architecture. And so really not only engaging with the community as the newsroom, but creating a community within the rural areas of Missouri.
Another thing that I learned about this project is that when we asked for a photo submission, we told them that we want professional headshots, and then they would, send us their logo, or they would send us like a selfie picture in a dark room, and then with a very blur quality. So moving forward, I think if Missouri Business Alert can work together with a photojournalist student, then I would really like to create a kind of a guidelines that is more visible. For example, a video guidelines on how to take your own picture with the help of someone with a good quality only by using a mobile phone.
Which on that note, a lot of newspapers are developing alternate streams of income. And so now that we know that most of the 80 businesses that are highly engaged don't have really good headshots, then that's an opportunity for them to host a headshot event, because the immigrant grocery store owner has never thought about like publicizing what they do and who they are and their story. And so I think that it's also a way to highlight voices that don't get highlighted in communities.
All right, great. Forrest, do you have any questions for this team?
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for presenting. I just want to say I love the focus on Instagram. I think generally it's an untapped resource comparatively for a lot of newsrooms. So I'm really glad y'all focused on that in terms of social growth. My question was about, did y'all have any conversations when promoting the user-generated content? Did y'all have conversations about, could you turn that into Instagram posts as well, or like carousels?
They are, oh, sorry. We're in the same room, so we're trying not to do the echo thing where you can hear it on both of our microphones. Thank you so much for the question, Forrest. It's actually what we're doing now. We're turning those Instagram story highlights into posts, and then we're also turning them into articles on the website, and then they're also being posted to Facebook. And the reason that we zeroed in on, and Facebook and LinkedIn. One reason that we zeroed in on Instagram is that it's one of the few social medias that still has hyperlocal tagging, so that you can say like, I'm in Jefferson City, or whatever small rural area that you're in. It also allows for location tagging within hashtags, and it's very user friendly. The other thing about Instagram stories is that when a newsroom posts something, the algorithm decides where it shows up in the newsfeed. But when you post a story, it will show up on the top of someone's Instagram page. And for a newsroom like the Missouri Business Alert, that is invaluable face time with your audience.
Yeah, I just want to add that the post, the social media post is not only limited on Instagram. Missouri Business Alert also pushed and promote the content in their Twitter, Facebook, and also LinkedIn. So this is like a content that can be capitalized to other social media accounts as well. And yeah, as I told you before, we got rich content, so it can also be developed into a podcast, because Missouri Business Alert also has a podcast section for entrepreneurs and for startups.
All right, great. Adriana, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had one quick question. I was curious if you ran into any kind of struggles, like communicating kind of the importance of kind of social and digital to kind of like the Business Alert, and even just like potential organizations that you could like replicate this with, just because I know a lot of times it's harder for a lot of kind of people to see the value of the social platforms when it may not directly, result in a bunch of like clicks to the website and things like that.
Sorry, so can you specify again your question? Is it more about Missouri Business Alert or more for the local businesses?
I think it's more for the alert, because I know you made like the resources page kind of for like resources for other people to kind of do the same thing. So I'm curious if like you all experienced kind of like issues or problems with like communicating it, and if you have like advice for people who want to do the same thing as you and how to communicate that to the organizations.
So we experienced a lot of barriers. One thing that is happening is people are feeling overwhelmed with like calls to action on social media. The Missouri Business Alert had tried to do user-generated content before by just posting like, hey, fill out this survey, you know, nominate these people or like generate content. And they only got 6 responses. And so something that we found that was much more helpful is they already had a massive subscriber list from their newsletter, and they had lists of businesses that showed up for their lunch and learns, and they had a newsletter list or email lists of people that donated to keep the newsroom open. And so when you're trying to generate user content, it's important to make sure that you are reaching the right people. So if you're a local music scene newspaper in a small neighborhood in a big city, you're not going to just email everyone in your neighborhood. You're going to email people in your neighborhood that care about music. And so with this, it wasn't just about spamming everyone that was a follower of Missouri Business Alert. It was about reaching out to especially Asian and Black owned businesses that don't get their stories told from those lists. And then it's also about making sure that you're reaching the people that your audience wants to know about. And then the other advice that I would have is that you have to express that this is short. It's not going to take a lot of time for people. I'm sure that you've heard of like survey fatigue, when you go to take a very long survey and you just quit before you get to the end. No newsroom has time for that. And so you want to keep it really short. Submit a photo, submit 2 sentences. The other thing that we found is that the #1 question when we first started piloting this was, is there a cost? Is this going to cost me money? Because a lot of newsrooms are trying to do bait and switches, like we'll feature you, but you have to pay for it. So if you're going to do truly user-generated content in a social media platform to raise engagement, you have to do it at no cost, and it has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. So the Missouri Business Alert, it wants to connect and interview business owners. Business owners want to read and see about people like them, so there's incentives on both sides for the relationship to work. Additionally, we found that we did not include enough storage space in our survey initially for people that did videos of themselves or massive files. And so you want to go through and pilot your program before you release it to the audience to make sure that there are no tech problems or anything like that. And thank you for the question.
All right. And Hannah, do you have any questions?
Yeah, it seems like you've done a lot with this project to try and both reach existing readers of the newsletter and people that are already aware of the brand, and also reach out to new people. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on trying to connect all of those together, so really create a feedback loop and do this more than just please fill out our survey and then we'll like broadcast your information to the world on Instagram or on our platforms, but really keep this being a regular feature or thing that the Missouri Business Journal does, and that it's something that the audience can look forward to and expect?
Yes, thank you so much for the question, Hannah. And yes, they currently the Missouri Business Alert wants evergreen content that's going to come out weekly at the same time so that their audiences are primed to come to their platforms. And so it's not just about like, oh, well, send us your photo and we'll post it. It's about send us your photo and your story. We're going to look them over. We're going to find the ones that people really want to know about, and it's quality over quality of content is first. And so the other thing is creating that feedback loop is which businesses responded to the survey. Are these people that need more of the Missouri Business Alerts services? So do they not have a headshot? Okay, well, let's have a headshot night. Do they, is English their 3rd or 4th language? All right, so let's interview them in person. And then featuring different business owners during different times. So it also creates a callback. So let's say that they interview someone for this, and then later on that business gets an award or makes national news. You have a starting survey as a basis for that story when they filled it out. So there are lots of different directions that the Missouri Business Alert can go with this. Their bread and butter is businesses, but it will depend on the news organization. And then Inda, did you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Larissa. Thank you for the question, Hannah. So one of the things that we learned when doing our project is that we read so many interesting stories, and then even Michael said that the content is so rich, and we can also create like a content out of the profile itself. So for example, some of the businesses, they constantly mention the big help from the community. Like, you know, there is a Missouri business woman center that helped them, create their business, and then help them walk them through the process of creating their business, like, you know, creating a business license and the likes. And so it also kind of gives an idea for Missouri Business Alert to cover events that really are helpful for the local businesses. And they also, or we also talked to them, and they also said that it's a really good evergreen content, so it can be published, you know, once a week, and then once we have, like, you know, many submission, then we can it shows that, you know, there is a demand for it, right? So they can also publish it like 2 times a week. And right now we have 83 responses on the survey, and 53 of them are full responses. So we can, you know, kind of call back, you know, those who haven't finished their survey yet, and, you know, okay, what we can help, and we can have an interview with you to provide an opportunity to tell your stories.
All right, thank you so much. Fantastic too. So now we are going to take a short break so everyone can grab some food, breathe some fresh air, use the bathroom, whatever you need. We will be back at 1:15 with Team Scripps. So Team Scripps, please get ready, and we will see you next. Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome back to the RJI Student Competition. We have already had 5 teams present, and now we are going to have 5 more. I will wait to make sure. Judges, are you all back? They may not be. Let's give them a second. In the meantime, audience members, you can type in the Q&A box if you have a question for our teams. We won't always have time, as we're only giving 10 minutes for Q&A for each team. But if we do have extra time, I will try to get to those. Otherwise, each team is providing their contact info, so feel free to reach out to them and ask questions after the competition. These 5 teams will present, and then we will take an hour break, and the judges will go confer outside of the webinar room. And we will then present awards between 4 and 4:30, depending on how the next few teams go. So our next team to present is Team Scripps. Team Scripps, please let me know when you are ready.
Sure. Should I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes, please do.
So, hello and welcome. We are Team Scripps, and today we're going to tell you about our story timeline tool, which we prepared for this competition. Before we get into that, let me just introduce myself, and my team members will do so as well. My name is Bharbi Hazarika, and I'm a graduate student at Ohio University, and I'm from Assam, India.
And my name is Delaney Murray. I'm a graduate student at Ohio University, and I'm from Athens, Ohio.
And my name is Teo Peck Suzuki. I'm also a graduate student at Ohio University, and I'm also from Athens, Ohio. So I'm also going to briefly introduce our partners. First, our partner newsroom, the Athens News, which serves the city of Athens in Appalachian, Ohio. Athens is a city of about 25,000 residents, 80% of whom are students at Ohio University, which forms the economic center of the town. The A News produces an average of 9 stories each day with a core staff of 2 people, and the website receives between 50 and 100,000 monthly views. To implement our project, we also worked closely with Town News, a digital publishing company that provides the content management system that the Athens News uses for its site. Town News generously assisted us by implementing our vision for the tool on their CMS, which vastly expanded what we were able to do in just a few months. Eventually, we expect a version of this tool will be available to all 1,200 block CMS users. So this is the story timeline. Its purpose is to empower newsrooms to turn masses of individual articles into cohesive, living narratives for their readers. In doing so, we are helping to solve a problem that affects all newsrooms in the digital age, and particularly smaller newsrooms, the problem of information saturation. Today, the speed and volume of digital information means that each of us is constantly overwhelmed by the amount and variety of content that crosses our eyes. Despite having so much information at our fingertips, we often find ourselves less informed because there is no method to the madness of what we see. This flood of information causes serious engagement issues for local newsrooms. In the first case, local news gets buried in the middle of everything else that we see on our devices. It becomes hard for people to tell what's important that's happening in their communities. Calls to action from local organizations are lost, and ultimately, people stop paying attention to what's happening around them. Given all of this, it should come as no surprise that 4 in 10 students do not find local news interesting. The problem is that all the information in the world does nothing for us if it's jumbled. To understand what's happening, we need stories.
So for a solution to these problems, we wanted to change a few key things. First, we wanted to connect stories together. We wanted to encourage more people to follow local news. We wanted something that could be integrated cleanly into existing newsrooms. And we really wanted to emphasize the importance of local news and to put these stories into their full context so that readers can really create stakes to these local narratives. We achieved all these goals in our timeline tool, which is actually live on the Athens News website right now, and you can see in this video that we've prepared. So this is what the front page of the Athens News looked like about a week ago when I wanted to take this video. So when you log on to the news site, all your typical headlines will be on the left side and in the center. And on the right side are these story timelines. There are currently 4 available, and they cover local news, state news, campus news. So say I'm particularly interested in COVID vaccine distribution within Athens County. I can click on this timeline, and while I'm scrolling, I see every story that the Athens News has covered about vaccine distribution since they first started covering that topic. It's organized chronologically from newest story to oldest. So I can scroll down and I can see when the important updates happened, what those important updates were. I can see the full context just at a glance. And then if I'm really interested in this topic, if I'm already logged into my free Athens News account, I just have to click the green button at the top, and within 2 clicks, I'm subscribed to the timeline, and I'll get updates every time they post a new story within this timeline directly to my email. Now, what's really nice about the timeline is that you're not lost from the timeline once you get into a story. There's this green arrow at the top that always leads back to the original timeline. So say I click on the story, I scroll down and I see it's pretty short and I want to go back and get some more context. I just have to click on that arrow and I'm right back where I started. With the timeline tool, you never have to worry about getting lost. So what exactly makes the timeline tool so effective? Well, the timeline tool takes advantage of readers' desires to dig deeper. So we use direct calls to action like our follow buttons, and also easy organization and navigation. And this makes people want to keep exploring. This organization also encourages people to stay on the site and explore more stories and can really invest them deeply into those narratives. This investment can also encourage other forms of interaction in the comment section or on social media. So it's not just within the timeline tool itself. Additionally, if users stay on the site longer after finding it on a search engine, then the Athens News site climbs higher in search engine results. So more readers can find us organically through just searching via any search engine. All these features work well together to bring in new readers and boost overall reader engagement within the community. Additionally, the timeline tool builds on strengths we noticed in other timeline tools that are available on the market, as well as some weaknesses that we thought could be improved upon. So tools like Box Card Stacks, Circa, the New York Times' Times Topics, and Timeline.js are all great ways to contextualize and organize big news stories. But we wanted a tool that did a little bit more. We wanted to see a tool that was easily accessible, well organized, and comprehensive. We also wanted a tool that organized specific news stories rather than just broad topics and encouraged more reader interactivity. We wanted something that was really follower-based. We also wanted this to be available to small local newsrooms so they could benefit from greater organization interactivity. We didn't want this to just be a tool that big newsrooms with lots of reporters and lots of outside resources we could use. We wanted this to be accessible to everybody. So our timeline tool builds upon each of these core ideas and brings it together in one place.
So while creating this tool, we were especially interested in thinking about reporters in small newsrooms, in local newsrooms. Athens News itself has about 2 permanent members in its newsroom, and we wanted to make it easy for them. The feature is convenient enough for any newsroom with Block CMS to implement, and the process is simple. It includes 3 steps. First, all a reporter needs to do is create a collections asset in series mode. The collections asset is a commonly used asset in Block CMS for aggregating stories into a series. Step 2, impose the custom timeline property, which we design with Town News. And lastly, choose the stories you want included and press OK. There you have it. You've got a timeline. Readers can find it on the homepage of the website. And as previously mentioned, they can also jump into a timeline from a story. As for public reaction, we created a survey and over 50 university students and community members participated voluntarily. And responses are overwhelmingly positive. People not only find it effective and easy to use, but they come back to it. In fact, readers are telling us that this is saving them time, and it is proving to be an incentive for them to engage with Athens News. Not only that, almost 80% of our survey participants said they are more likely to use the Athens News for news updates in the future. And 90% said the timeline tool improved their experience on the Athens News website as a whole. But we don't want to stop there. Our goal is to expand our tool. In fact, we are already seeing Athens News take this tool and run with it. They are implementing it on several different stories, from university budget issues to vaccine distribution in Athens, and we plan to monitor this growth and build on it. As we continue to improve the timeline, we will refine how the prototype works. Since we are focused on enhancing user experience and engagement, we want to add effective features to it. For example, a bookmarking system that tells the reader exactly where they left off. Later down the line, we also plan to have a beta version released. As collaborators, Town News and my team hope that we can eventually produce a standalone asset that can be used by all 1,200 Block CMS newsrooms. This asset will create story timelines that are easier to navigate, refine, iterate, and customize. The end product will be a tool that is completely dynamic so that there isn't any manual effort required at all. Finally, my team and I truly believe that the only way to grow meaningful relationships between local newsrooms and readers is by creating interest in the content. And you generate that interest first through accessibility. Our goal is to make local newsrooms destinations for readers where they can connect with these local stories and engage with these newsrooms. That is what the story timeline is all about, making news simple to follow without simplifying it. Thank you so much for listening to us today and watching this timeline tool come alive with our presentation. We would also like to thank the amazing people at Athens News and Town News for embracing our idea, and also our professors who encouraged us along the way. If you would like to experience the story timelines for yourself, please head to the Athens News website where it's live now and tell us your thoughts. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, judges, we would love to answer them.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Hannah, would you like to start? Do you have any questions for this team?
I do have questions. Thank you so much for sharing this. I really like the idea of creating something that has context and something that is narratively driven still, especially in the local news space. But I'm wondering, have you thought about how you can almost double down on the work that's being done here. So you're creating organization, you're adding context. So how can you use that work that's been done to create newsletters or other off-platform experiences like Twitter threads, Instagram stories? Like I would encourage you to think about how you can make some of that work easier, because this is targeted to really small newsrooms. And I'd also like to know if you've thought about how the user might experience this and how you can bring them back, whether through an alert system or something like that. So I'd love to hear more about what you're hoping for maybe 2.0 version of this tool to be.
Absolutely. I'll take a stab at it, and my team members will also do so, I guess. First of all, we already have an alert system in place. So it's kind of like a customizable newsletter system of sorts, right? So you click on the follow button, you are already signed up to get alerts from it. So we are already creating a chain of engagement, where you are interacting with the newsroom, you're getting the updates that you want. And that will obviously, and you're not just getting it in your email, you have to obviously go to the news site. And that in itself adds to the engagement factor, right? You'll see another story with a timeline, you'll add to it. So it's kind of like a process like that. Teo or Delaney?
Yeah. I would add to that also. I think as far as integrating it with other social media and stuff, we have seen the editors at the Athens News, like we said in our presentation, they're 2 full-time staff, so they're really the ones who are responsible for producing and pushing all the content. And they have done a few social media pushes with the timelines that already exist, and they've seen a lot of traffic come in as a result of that. I think for the most part, making that happen more is going to be primarily a question of just building that into the sort of day-to-day practice of the newsroom. And we're pretty optimistic that that's already happening and that it's going to continue, just because, we have seen, again, without any prompting from us, they added an entirely fourth timeline. There were 3 originally. They added a 4th one. With a bunch of articles. They've continued to update them. So we're quite optimistic that as time goes on, we're going to continue to see them sort of publicizing this and using it as a way to sort of spread the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that this tool is actually really useful to use on social media, because the way it's laid out, it almost looks like a Twitter thread in a way. So I think this could easily be moved to Twitter. It can be moved to, a slideshow on Instagram, all sorts of things. And then the current newsletter, like I mentioned, you just have to make an Athens News account, which is totally free. You just need a username, an email, and a password, and you're good to go. I think in the 2.0 version, we're hoping to kind of a box that pops out where people can just put in their email, and so they don't have to make an account initially if they don't want to. So that's kind of the next step to kind of keep people coming back, is giving them the flexibility. But we think this tool could be really great on other platforms as well.
Great. Julia, any questions for this team?
Yes, hi, thanks everyone. So I heard mention of talking to journalists, specifically the one in the Athens newsroom, about when developing the tool. I'm curious if you had any audience or stoked any or encouraged any audience or user feedback during the development of the tool, whether you sought it out, how it was incorporated, and what that development process was like.
So one of the things that we were kind of looking at initially, like when we were preparing for this tool, was we wanted to first find out what are the issues that local newsrooms are facing, and how can we get, and because Athens is like most of its population is students with a small population of community readers, we wanted to find out, okay, how can we get both the community readers and students be interested in the content that's being produced by Athens News. And when we were researching, interestingly, we found out at least none of the research papers that I looked at, and I looked at a few, had any clue or mentioned any reason for why that was happening. When we looked at it, but there was this constant sort of statement of like, oh, we are not interested, college students are not interested in local news. So that was one of our sort of thread like that we pulled, and we kept pulling after that. And that's when we found out that students are also so sort of distracted by national news, and obviously that's important, and international news, that they sometimes lose sight of local news. And that's what we wanted to kind of mitigate. We did take a survey, but we took a survey after we got it up and running, but we got some really great responses. People have said to us that, you know what, like this makes so much sense. Like, I'm new on campus, I did not know about these issues. So that's something that we have seen.
Great. Adriana, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just kind of had a quick question. I was wondering if you can kind of describe what the kind of like alert email kind of looks like when you're sending people notifications about the timeline. And then I was just curious if the timeline kind of landing page was able to like be shared like on social or anything like that to get people to kind of go back to that.
So you can link to each of the timelines themselves. There's no official story timeline landing page. That's another plan in our 2.0. So you can't go to, Athens News /timelines yet, but you can link to each of the timelines originally. Actually, when we announced this project, I made a Twitter thread of each of the timelines and kind of explain what they were. So you can share it that way. As for the alerts, the one that I'm subscribed to, so the COVID vaccine one that you saw me subscribe to, I haven't gotten an update from that timeline yet. But I believe that you just get an email where it's like, hey, you subscribe to a timeline, here's a new story, and you have a link to read it. And then obviously it takes you to the rest of the timeline as well. So it's a pretty simplistic email. And again, we can adjust it in the 2.0, but that's what it looks like right now.
All right, great. Forrest, do you have any questions?
Hi, thanks for everything you presented. I was actually going to ask about if I need to create an account to sign up for notifications, but I noted that y'all answered that that's something that's kind of like on your radar, like signing up for notifications without having an account. Did y'all use any like analytics tools to measure how readers interacted with the timelines compared to like maybe even some of the stories within the timeline, right? Like I would love to hear about like engaged time or, if there's a subscriber weighted like paid views kind of element to that. But did y'all use any analytics tools at all?
We did. So we worked with the Athens News and with Town News to just kind of, they have a Google Analytics with the different website traffic statistics. And so what we found after just a couple of weeks of running it is that people who are using the timelines, their dwell time on the site is usually about, I want to say off the top of my head, it's like maybe 3 minutes, 30 seconds on average, which is about 3 times what it is for the average users in general. And we're also seeing that people, their click-through rate is a lot higher. So what that told us is that the people who this timeline is attracting and who are finding it useful are sort of local residents who are already kind of primed to be more loyal and returning users to the newspaper. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question. But those are the primary analytics that we were interested in looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right, very good. And we do have about a minute left, so I'll take a question from an attendee. Barbara says, Athens is a very small town. How do you guys see this idea working in a larger community? How would you adapt it?
Interestingly enough, like we were talking to Christine Masters from Town News, and she sort of took the lead on helping us from Town News, and she has already told us that like a couple of the other new clients from other other counties and other states and all across America, they've found interest, like they are actually interested in implementing it, and those are larger than Athens News, but nationally speaking as well, I think it's a great tool because it's something that we all sort of feel, right, when we are looking at news and like, okay, where did it start? What is this story about? A house burned down and then there's a lawsuit being placed. Which house? Where was it? All of those issues now you can find on one single web page, and it's an easy process. All you need is organizational tools for it, and it can be done nationally, locally, internationally.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Team Scripps. Thank you for your presentation. And our next team is Team Clark Kent's. Please let me know when you are ready to start. All right, go ahead whenever you'd like to start. Kate, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. We are the Clark Kents from Kent State University and are excited to introduce our project entitled Open Source Solutions Journalism to you. My name is Kate Klinowski, and I have the pleasure of introducing my fellow students, Alex Johnson and Amanda Shaw. We are grateful for our guidance of our professor, Jacqueline Marino, Assistant Professor Abe Avneson, and Associate Professor Sue Zake. Our team has been partnering with Lee Chilcote and The Land, a local news startup with a mission to report on Cleveland's neighborhoods and inner ring suburbs. It delivers in-depth stories that foster accountability, inform the community, and inspire people to take action. However, underserved communities do present challenges to engagement. Cleveland has a population of over 380,000 residents. Easy access to electronic news platforms for a large cross-section of citizens is a problem. Only 66% of Cleveland households have broadband internet subscriptions, and 79% have a computer. In a recent report funded by the John F. Knight and Cleveland Foundations, in addition to a lack of technology and basic needs, there is a great deal of community distrust of mainstream media. I don't want my children getting their facts from the news, and our needs are not discussed in large media. Were just two of the quotes taken from a series of interviews with community members. There is a feeling of underrepresentation in unidirectional news coverage, and our response required us to consider these challenges by offering a bi-directional platform that would reach community members where they are and also represent a broader spectrum of that community. So Northeast Ohio's media ecosystem has weakened significantly, and thus amplifying the need for reporting on and giving voice to individuals from urban neighborhoods and who are underrepresented in the media. The Institute for Nonprofit News reported that many nonprofit outlets are working to reach and engage communities underserved and unserved by traditional outlets. The Land is one of those. In initial discussions, we identified the Slavic Village neighborhood as an ideal location to pilot our idea. On a personal note, it's also the neighborhood my father's family settled in when they came to the United States. Broadway Slavic Village is a neighborhood on the south side of Cleveland, Ohio, and Slavic Village is named for what was once two Czech and Polish neighborhoods centered on Fleet Avenue and Broadway. The population of Central Europeans in the neighborhood peaked in the period from the 1920s to 1940 and began to decline in 1950s and 60s as increased racial tensions influenced many of these families to move to suburban areas. As of the 2010 census, the neighborhood population of approximately 22,000 citizens with a poverty rate of 35% consists of a diverse racial makeup of 52% Black, 41% white, and the remainder predominantly identifying as biracial or Latinx. The neighborhood has been a lightning rod for negative news in the past, including the 2007 housing crisis, where a large percentage of properties were foreclosed upon, as well as reported increases in criminal activity. Alternatively, the area is also known for its strong neighborhood collaborations, affordable housing, arts, and revitalization projects. As we discovered in our early conversations with community groups and residents, there's a demand for more organic coverage of the community. And Amanda will explain this concept in more detail.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to start by sharing the conceptual process of our project that we called Ask the Land in the spirit of a modern day media action line. Our process facilitates two-way communication between the newsroom and the community. The land therefore both reports to and sources from community members through an accessible platform. Our process, although circular, begins with research and community engagement. Engaging community members allows us to identify residents' needs, values, and their goals for the partnership with the newsroom. The process moves next to publishing stories based on what was learned. In our 4-week pilot, 4 stories were published that were sourced from residents themselves. The next step allows us to return to engagement by sharing out these stories to our members and soliciting feedback. The process then, in essence, starts over, but truly is a continuous cycle that facilitates, again, our goal of two-way communication. We had to figure out what type of platform would allow us to implement this concept. We needed a platform that was accessible, bridging both digital and generational divides. This eliminated social media, email, and other web-based platforms. The platform also had to be convenient. For instance, we didn't want to ask participants to download an app or do anything else that would be a barrier to engagement. And finally, we wanted to communicate directly with community members. We ultimately landed on a texting platform called Subtext that met these needs and capitalized on the fact that our cell phones are always with us. An example of how the texting platform and our process came together is a story about a Slavic village contractor. Our first step of the process, research, included our discussions with community partners and residents via Zoom meetings. Here, we identified that there was a desire to change the negative perception of Slavic village in the media. And through follow-up questions by text, members shared that they hope to spotlight the large number of community businesses. The land published a story on a local business that also rehabbed a commercial property in Slavic village. And then next, community members received a text message with the story tagline, the full story link, and a follow-up question to solicit reactions. This slide highlights just a fraction of our more than 60 text responses in 4 weeks' time. Community members shared that they found it helpful to have a question or a prompt to respond to, but a small number of participants spontaneously texted ideas to the land. This process is multi-step and includes substantial communication with residents, but we think it remains feasible from the scale-up perspective. The pilot model consisted of 3 weekly texts to 30 participants, costing us about 4 man-hours each week. We did not include the journalism, research, interviewing, and reporting in this estimate because the stories are happening either way. The pilot simply helped shape the readership and reporting content. For large newsrooms or audiences, the program could be adapted for time and money savings by sending texts at a lower frequency, assigning interns to process and respond to texts, or informing participants in advance that they will not receive responses. I'll hand things over to Alex now to share more information on the texting model's effectiveness.
Thank you, Amanda. We wanted to start out with a small but substantial group of participants, and we succeeded. 29 people registered for our subtext program during the pilot period, and 13 of those people were consistently engaged and responsive throughout the project. So we had a core group of community members, around 45%, who were always engaged. By setting metrics and using analytics tools, we were able to see which topics were most important to the audience. We saw which stories were getting the most clicks and receiving the most responses, and we were able to compare that data to learn more about the audience's needs. That's something that ties into our next point. This project was a learning process for us, and we made it a point to be extremely open to change depending on the needs of the community. For instance, we found that while many community members were using Facebook, the platform didn't get much traction when used in conjunction with subtext, so we shifted away from that. We also learned that some people would be open to print and phone calls in addition to text. We were excited to find that we exceeded our recruitment goal, and the feedback we received was extremely insightful. And finally, we saw improvements in the reporting process and engagement, and found that audience members were very grateful and even surprised to know that their messages were being read by the newsroom. The land has expressed an interest in continuing to grow this project in Slavic Village, and since they report on a wide range of neighborhoods in the Cleveland area, the newsroom is planning on expanding it to other communities as well. Subtext would even allow us to provide phone numbers specific to each community. In the near future, our team will be publishing a blog that showcases all of our steps and the work necessary to implement this model. We're considering things like scalability and audience size to make sure that larger newsrooms will also be able to adopt a similar model if they're interested in fostering that deeper connection with their audience. In all of these ways, our project will continue to live on, and we're excited to keep working on it and seeing where it goes in the future. With that, we'd like to thank you for your time and open it up to any questions you may have.
Great, thank you so much. So let's see, Forrest, do you have any questions for this team?
Hi, yeah, I want to say thank you for the presentation. I was in Texas last week when it seemed like the entire state was snowed in and without power. And I noticed that a lot of newsrooms also started using subtext to reach people who didn't have access to information digitally, and so they could provide them news that they could use. So it's really cool that y'all use subtext. I guess my question is, did y'all do any kind of like physical outreach in terms of maybe putting up like QR codes or flyers up around the community so that people could join without having to, I guess, stumble upon the number to text or stumble on an article promoting the text service? Or how, yeah.
Yeah, this is a great question. So because of the pandemic, our initial ideas were to do some door-to-door marketing and including flyers, and our participants also recommended print news. And so because of the pandemic and because of the weather, we actually shifted away from that, but that's in the plans to grow engagement within the community for sure.
Yeah, we were actually going to show you our flyer, but for some reason it's not loading. But yeah, we thought that was a good idea too. Thank you.
Great.
I also had another question. Did y'all, I noticed, so what, you said 45% of the people who signed up for text were engaged. Did y'all do anything to figure out like maybe what could have been improved from the other folks? Like, you know, what could have been improved to have them engage?
So we followed up with a Zoom meeting, and we were able to gather not only participant feedback, but was really interesting was we also engaged participants that in the Zoom meetings that were not participating in the text. So so we did get some feedback. Kate, do you want to talk a little bit more about the feedback in the Zoom meetings?
Absolutely. It was very interesting to see how people perceived their participation in this project. We had a person who said that they didn't want to be involved in texting, but yet was very involved and actually texted back quite a bit. We had other people who said that they wanted to participate, but were nervous about where their texts were going. And so some of them, you know, I think that we could develop that by being much more clear about who is receiving those texts, that they're not being blasted out to everyone, and that it's going to be something where we felt that a level of anonymity was really going to help people feel a little more clear or a little more comfortable in saying what they were concerned about or ideas that they had. So yeah, we think that there's definitely room to grow, and we think that we could have had more engagement even with that group of people that we were happy to get a hold of, had we been able to really spend more time explaining and promoting that and marketing that in a way that helped them understand how that process worked a little bit better. But I think our Zoom meetings, having that connection, really let people share those ideas and made them feel very comfortable about what they were participating in. So it was nice to have that twofold outreach.
All right, great. Adriana, do you have any questions for this team?
I actually had the same questions for us, but thanks so much for the presentation.
Thanks. All right, Julia, any questions from you?
Hi, thanks everyone. I wanted to kind of dig into what you're already thinking about, which is scalability. I think a lot of newsrooms the last 5-10 years have found that one-on-ones especially do lead to deeper engagement, especially when it's coming from directly from the journalist. And that's something that has launched many different strategies around getting our journalists' names and faces and personalities on the forefront. So with that in mind, I would just love to dig into that piece and hear how you're thinking about scaling this.
I think that the biggest commitment with regard to time and staffing is responding to individuals. And we learned from our participants that they really appreciated the responses. And when they received a response, they were far more likely to text us again. And so even though to scale up, an option could be to let participants know in advance that their participation is going to be acknowledged through the news coverage that they read in the future. I think, using an intern model or responding maybe to a certain number of texts per send out is maybe a good idea with regard to larger newsrooms. Alex or Kate, do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. I think really what Amanda was touching on is we want people to feel like their concerns and their questions that they send are reflected in the coverage, even if we aren't, if we don't have the chance to respond to them directly in a text message. And so there are ways to sort of refine that process, even as the organizations that adopt this model grow in size and tend to be larger. So really, it's just a matter of making sure that voices are heard, and that even if if there are 10 text messages about a particular issue, we have a chance to sort of address that issue. And while we might not get to every single person who's sending us a message, we are letting people know that, hey, your messages are being read. We see what you're saying, and we want to help focus on this issue.
Absolutely. I agree with everything that both Amanda and Alex said. We found with doing this that we could see an immediate increase in the level of trust that we were getting with our participants just by responding, and then by actually producing the news articles that they were suggesting. And so when they saw those in print, the responses then exponentially increased, and that made people a lot more excited about being a part of journalism and wanting to make suggestions. And in those last Zoom meetings, they said, we could use this for this, and we could use it for this. And everyone was really getting fired up about what could be done in their neighborhood, not just addressing or having to hear about the litany of problems, but also hear about the possibilities for growing and building and connecting. People are like, oh, I didn't know you worked over here. We should get together sometime. We can't wait for the pandemic to be over so we can work together on this new project, and then we can report on it. And that to me is what journalism is really about. And it was very exciting to watch that fire rekindle.
Great. Hannah, any questions from you?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Sticky button there. Yeah, so I've done some work when I worked in Dallas with a texting tool. And one of the things that we found was that it feels to some journalists like yet another thing to do. I think that this is like a perception also with like introducing any new thing, but especially something like this that can seem a little maybe personally risky, or just so different from like the day-to-day writing of a story. So I wonder if you could talk about any sorts of pain points that you had and like ways that you worked through that with the individual people.
Yeah, what I can think of right off the bat, and then I'll pass again to my colleagues, is we ran a story on the lead poisoning crisis. And what we found, and we hadn't planned for, was that this direct one-to-one kind of communication offered a bit of anonymity that really allowed us to see the dichotomy between both renters' experiences and feelings and homeowners or landowners, property owners' experience and feedback. And so that's something that is actually a continued research project between the land and some other local journalists, because it's a huge issue. But that was actually a point that we did not think of, but we were kind of saved because of that one-to-one anonymity. Kate or Alex, what should we add?
I was going to say that it's we found that using that particular these particular stories really opened up our eyes to the power dynamics that are going on in the community, where there's usually even in hyper-local news, there is a very dominant voice that tends to take over. And that was something we were warned to early on by talking to some of the community development corporations. They're like, we wanted to talk to people who are already doing work on the ground. And they said, you know, we just need to give you a heads up that this group of people is going to want to dominate the conversation, and it tends to be the same people. And how are you going to get past that? And that was one of the things we talked about, was we really needed to find different touch points to encourage people who had been sort of left out of those community conversations to find them, kind of root them out, encourage them to come out and speak. And this was a really great way to do that, because it did meet people where they were, and it met people in an area where they maybe weren't offered a platform to speak. And so this really was a much more diverse group than we could have possibly ever imagined, and we were really grateful for that.
All right, well, thank you so much, Clark Kent. And now up next remains to be Zine. Please come in if you are not already in the room. All right, I think. There we go. Okay. All right, start whenever you're ready.
Hola a todos, welcome to Oli Taco and USC's Collaborative Community Zine Project. We are Remain to be Seen. Here's a sneak peek of what remains to be seen.
Crank up the Beach Boys, man.
I'm Astrid Kayembe, a senior at USC.
I'm Caitlin Hernandez, a junior at USC.
I'm Laura Gonzalez. I'm a grad student at USC.
And I'm Melody Weintal, also a grad student at USC.
So to start off, our work, we've partnered with LA Taco, which is an independent news source covering news, food, culture, and community. Their goal is to bring raw and street level journalism from all corners of LA. And our project with them is to produce content and live events with the community to be all included in our zines. And so moving on to our audience, to prepare for this, we really want to learn where the community interacts the most with LA Taco's work and why. While they are a digital only platform, most of their target audience isn't digitally native and has Spanish as their first language. While researching across their platforms, we found that food content, social justice coverage, and LA-centric moments like the Lakers winning the championship in 2020 grabbed the most attention. But above all, LA Taco is a publication for the streets. Other important points that we located in our research, for site traffic, a majority of LA Taco's readers is strictly in Los Angeles, which is then trailed by San Diego and Long Beach. Facebook, we identified as having the largest gaps overall. They have the lowest amount of following and engagement numbers. And apart from this, we also had conversations with LA Taco's editor-in-chief, Javier Cabral, about what content people resonated with the most. And that backed up the topics we identified earlier. And now I will pass it off to Astrid.
And so from our research, we've identified a few different areas for innovation. And so the first, LA Taco as it stands is a digital only platform and relies heavily on social media for publicity. And we wanted to sort of disrupt the digital natives platform by pushing them to create more accessible content, both on and offline. Further, in order for LA Taco to generate revenue, they use a membership model. In order for them to be fully independent and not rely heavily on their donors, they need more members in order to continue delivering quality journalism to the people of LA. And finally, LA Taco has a very particular voice and brand. As we know, it's the gritty LA Taco lifestyle. And they know their audience super well. It's why they're such an esteemed publication. However, many publications, not just LA Taco, fall into this habit of making journalism for other journalists and not really tapping into the audience who they cover and who it's supposed to be for. And so here are some examples of LA Taco using their social media platforms, Twitter, which we saw as the most used one, or the most engaged with one, to be able to advertise for more subscribers. And here is a map of where LA Taco's audience resides, largely in East and South Los Angeles. And so currently we're living in a time period in which innovation is immediately associated with digitality and technology. However, we forget that there are still people in this country who don't have this type of access all the time. Even in urban centers like Los Angeles, the digital divide still persists, and we want to be able to address that through this project.
Engaging with our audience was a big part of this project too. One way we connected with the LA Taco community was by hosting events and live streaming them on Facebook. But it's not just a live stream. We want to help give people a platform that they wouldn't otherwise have. We had a Zapotec chef teach us how to make frijoles from home with recipes submitted by viewers. We also invited street vendors to talk to us about the challenges she faced with COVID-19 and introduced other vendors in the community to their stories. Here's one of them. Along with posting on LA Taco's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, this was the link for viewers to submit their recipes and stories. We're also planning on partnering with Las Fotos Project to explore what LA means to our youth, along with other callouts about horchata, raspados, and LA culture, asking what does it mean to be an Angelino. We presented these submissions in the live stream, and they will also be used in the community scene. These were a few of the submissions we had. Many users shared the different ways they cook their beans.
Hola, yo soy Erika, estoy en casa y hoy voy a preparar unos frijoles negros.
So during our implementation, our goal was to connect with the audience through storytelling and culture sharing. During the live with Claudia Virgil, who is a street vendor in South LA, she mentioned the challenges they've had last year with coronavirus, but she also mentioned other instances in which they've been subjected to violence and other injustices. Claudia talked to us about her own fears and dreams, and we really wanted to humanize the street vendors and their stories and to create connections with the audience that they could understand, that the readers from LA Taco could understand and could relate to. When we talked to Poncho from Poncho's Tlayudas, he showed us how to do the beans. Obviously, he was making, but more than that, he told us that his purpose is to preserve his Zapotec culture, his cuisine, and the traditions. He's connecting with people through food, and that is something that the LA Taco audience can relate to. Both of these people, Claudia and Poncho, are part of the culture and economic landscape of Los Angeles. And by bringing their stories to the LA Taco readers, we are connecting the readers to their own city.
And so here are some of the results of our project implementation. So from both of the Facebook events, we've reached over 4,000 people, have accumulated over 600 engagements, which entails reactions, comments, shares, and nearly 2,000 views as of yesterday. And so using data from Pew Research Center, we've identified that Facebook is the most popular social media platform amongst Latinx internet users. And we know this not only from data, but anecdotally. Facebook is a community-oriented experience, especially for this community. And further, because of LA County's restrictions and out of consideration for our audience, who is the most vulnerable to the virus, we wanted to refrain from in-person events. And so this is what I was talking about earlier, was virtually accessible content. And so we figured what better way to engage LA Taco's audience than bringing our events to their digital doorstep, and it's produced fruitful results. Our events weren't just live streams, they helped give people to a platform who wouldn't otherwise have it, which is exactly what LA Taco is all about. It's innovation by going back to the basics and using the multitude of tools that were already at our disposal. And so, as I mentioned earlier, our primary goals are to increase audience participation and increase membership, and we were successful in both. 50% of viewers from the Frijoles event and 74% of viewers from the Street Vendors event were already LA Taco Facebook followers, meaning that we have reached and cultivated a community that was there for us but wasn't being engaged with. The rest of the viewers came from shares and recommendations made outside of that network. And as long as it stays on LA Taco's Facebook page, it will continue to live beyond the nights that we broadcasted. Also, LA Taco has gained 50 more subscribers since our first event. And our final goal is to mend that digital gap that does exist between LA Taco and its readers. And so Caitlin will talk a little bit more about our upcoming project that will address all three of these objectives.
Yes, so looking ahead to what's next, we will be distributing around 3,000 to 4,000 zines for each volume. Pictured here at the left is our food issue, that is the cover, and we'll also be doing a social justice and arts issue as well. And then about 1,800 will be sent to existing LA Taco members, and they'll use a free zine as a draw to increase membership too. We'll also distribute physical copies in the community. And just a few tips for newsrooms looking to try this out. Ask for submissions, get the community engaged, adapt live content into the print product. For our Street Vendors event, we have an accompanying walking tour map and photo story, as well as content from our live. And locally source if you can, wherever possible.
Engagement doesn't look one way. In this presentation, we showed you several different ways, including call outs, live streams, and a community zine. But we're not done yet. We still have several engagement projects, and the zine will be printed and distributed in LA in the coming months. What happens next remains to be seen. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So let's go to questions. Adriana, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the presentation. I was just kind of curious. I would kind of love to know kind of how you all marketed these events on social. And just because I noticed, I think almost like half or a little bit more than half of the people were already kind of existing followers of LA Taco. So like, how would you market it? And then kind of like in the future, what's your plan to kind of maybe get people who haven't been exposed to LA Taco yet?
I can go ahead and take that one. So for this, I mean, one of the challenges that we had also was funding. So, for example, like, doing like an ad call out on Facebook costs a little bit of money. So we weren't able to do that, but we did use targeted social media strategies to share across their Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, in the weeks leading up to the event, and then also, the day of. And then now that it's also live, we also have call outs that are publicly listed, where people can still engage with the event, but also the call outs that we've done as well.
We've also reached out to food groups and other contacted street vendors too, to be able to form these live streams and have them connect with us.
All right, great. Julia, do you have any questions for this team?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for your presentation. I was just thinking about how the membership piece of this is what I wanted to dig into a little bit. It's great that that's LA, that's LA Taco's business model. That's one of the goals you've articulated here. And I know in my experience, there are easy, right? Nothing is easy. Ways on digital where folks can click through, and that's one pathway towards membership. In person is actually a really great one too, as you all have noted, but we're in a pandemic because you have someone right there that's actively in front of you, came to your event, and so their pathway to membership is arguably a little bit more accessible there. So I was wondering what your thoughts and thinking have been around what the path to membership is for the print product.
Yeah, so LA Taco's membership program is actually so cool. For just $9.99 a month, you have access to discounts to local taco shops. LA Taco does a really good job, like I said earlier, that they know their audience and can and knows how to cultivate that in really community-oriented ways already. And so, like I said, like their membership includes in addition, you can get like a t-shirt, a mug, stuff like that, just to cultivate community. And so with this print zine, what we're hoping is that people will, for example, see that walking tour map and be like, oh my God, like, not only do I want to go here, but I would also love to get a discount. I would love to get a discount when doing so. And so we're hoping that the print material can also serve as marketing material for memberships for LA Taco.
Great. Forrest, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to say the presentation was like really cool. All the graphics and design of everything was really good. But I think that's also because I like LA Taco's designs. But yeah, I guess my question was really on for the zine. I've never been a part of creating a zine before, so I was curious, the live events that y'all have already done and some of the submissions y'all have already got, is that going to kind of populate the zine, or is the zine going to be produced with content that y'all will get in the future, like future live events and so forth?
It's both actually. So some of the content that we've already produced will be in the zine, and there's also new content being created for the zine. So it's actually a combination of both.
And we'll be using like AR. They can scan a QR code to actually access these live streams and videos and kind of engage with the zine itself, also digitally.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Hannah, do you have any questions?
Yeah, first a comment. I love zines. I converted part of my master's thesis into one, so I just love that you're thinking in this way. But I appreciate that you made a really holistic approach to audience, that you really said that this isn't a one size fits all thing. But I'm curious, what was the most surprising thing, or what do you wish that if you had another 8 months that you would want to tackle?
I definitely think the promotion part would have been a great thing to have more time with, create more events, since we only had 2 months to really present these events. We will be presenting more throughout the semester because we're still working on printing out these zines. But definitely if we had a little more time, like have more events, plan more, and because with engagement, the more consistent you are, the more people will kind of log in and they know you're here. So that probably would have been one of the things that we would do more.
And if we could meet in person too, I think that was also a thing that I think that if there was no pandemic, we could have bring these to the a higher level. But obviously we adapted and we did as the most we could.
All right, well, thank you so much. Team remains to be Zine. Wonderful presentation. And up next is Team Cardinals. So Tim, let me know when you are ready to present.
Can everyone see and hear me all right?
Yep, we can.
All right.
All right.
So good morning. I am Tim Cordes with the Cardinals, and I'll be presenting our presentation, which is Civic Engagement in a Small Texas City. This is in collaboration with the Port Arthur News and the University Press. So I am the managing editor of the Lamar University Press, Lamar student newspaper, and my partner is Olivia Malik, the editor of the Lamar University Press. Now we're going to show a short video showing the background of Port Arthur and the background of our project, and our goal to rebuild a relationship of trust and learning within the Port Arthur community and the Port Arthur News.
The project has been designed to build trust and engagement within a community. Polarization about trust and credibility is a broad issue nationally, and some would say the most important issue facing contemporary media outlets today. Much research has been conducted over the last decade analyzing these issues, and a frequent complaint from stakeholders is the perceived concept that the media has its own agenda first and not that of the community at large. To address that concept, this project is to test a listening theory. Can local media outlets enhance their community connection by engaging the voices of their communities at large about what issues are important to them and how local media can improve that relationship? The first step is to engage the community over a local issue that will have an impact on them directly. The first example chosen is about news coverage by the Port Arthur News of a proposed city plan to reallocate sales tax funds to improve 2 city parks, making them premier parks in an attempt to improve quality of life for city residents. The proposal is on the ballot for voters to decide May 1st, 2021, and the starting point is facilitating a forum for residents and city officials to discuss this plan. The news will moderate the event, and the Cardinal Con team is responsible for developing and implementing a social media strategy and a subscriber email campaign to encourage people to attend and participate in the discussions. Additionally, the Cardinal Com team will measure engagement metrics from the social media and subscriber campaign before and after the event. Based upon engagement metrics and residents' responses, the campaign will adjust to foster further engagement on this issue and others prior to the May 1st vote. This event is the gateway to establishing regular forums virtually and in person as the pandemic wanes and allows for gatherings. The virtual component will stay as part of the campaign. The goal is to foster the engagement residents have with civic issues that directly impact their quality of life and to create a sustainable platform for the Port Arthur News to hear voices within their community and report on facts needed by readers or to explain coverage. The ongoing forums will link civic issues to residents, city leadership, and readers to build trust and credibility in a fragmented community. The forums will assist in the news asserting its authority as a local source for accurate, credible, and objective information for residents to make decisions about things that affect them. Port Arthur, Texas is a synonym of what many smaller rural and urban Gulf Coast communities have experienced over the last decade or so. Seemingly unrelenting and damaging weather-related events followed by economic and social hardships, population loss, and a struggle for residents to survive with limited employment opportunities and recovery options. The addition of the COVID-19 pandemic, municipal funding issues, and industrial accidents has challenged the city in multiple ways. In this mix, there is the Port Arthur News newspaper, publishing a 6-day-a-week print newspaper and online news site in Jefferson County, Texas. The News is one of 2 daily papers covering a region of 1,113 square miles, larger than the state of Rhode Island, but slightly smaller than Delaware. The population of the city is 54,280 based on the incomplete tabulation of the 2020 census. The 2010 census listed 57,775 residents. The most recent and impactful single event was Hurricane Harvey's damage in August 2017 that flooded an estimated 20,000 homes, almost 100% of the city's households, after receiving 26 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. The severe flooding and damage forced many residents to leave. Several thousand never returned. The city has also been battered by Hurricane Rita in 2005, Hurricane Umberto in 2007, Tropical Storm Edward in August 2008, Hurricane Ike in September 2008, and other lesser tropical disturbances after. A conflicting dichotomy of economic factors face this city, its recovery, and its future. The region is home to some of the country's and world's largest petrochemical facilities that produce billions in revenue for the national and global energy markets. The largest gasoline refinery in the United States, Motiva Refinery, is located there. However, the city regularly is pegged as one of the highest areas of unemployment in the state of Texas. The petroleum industry dollars do not reach all community residents equally. This trickle-down effect impacts all financial segments of the community, which in turn affects the Port Arthur News. The result is the downsizing of the footprint in news gathering and reporting and local coverage. The news staff has repeatedly been downsizing to a shadow of its former self and lost its offices to Hurricane Harvey, requiring the organization to relocate for several months to neighboring Orange County. These events have disrupted readership relationships, circulation, and a loss of engagement and trust in local news coverage. This project aims to address that with the creation of a sustainable strategy and plan of action.
Why is a local newspaper important to a community?
The key for any newspaper, and especially in our community, is we're the connection from our community to their local government. They need to know that their taxpayer dollars, how it's being used as far as education, public utilities, quality of life services, that it's being done in the right way. And if they have questions, we need to be the conduit to get those answers for them. The second and equally important deal for a community newspaper like ourselves is we act as an accountability stretch for any elected official or appointed official, whether that's like a chief of police, a council member, a head of a utilities department, so that there's a sense of accountability that goes beyond just a simple work environment. Because we serve the community, and our public officials need to serve the community as well.
What do you expect to accomplish with this project?
I want to directly link our community to their leaders as far as the Parks Department. We currently have an election scheduled May 1st, in which voters are going to be asked if they think it's okay to redirect funding that they're already spending in tax dollars towards a special project to highlight our parks and actually increase the revenue towards the parks so that the parks can have a greater funding source. And then how the parks is going to use that extra funding to have greater amenities, to attract more visitors, and serve both local residents and who attract outside community members to big tournaments and sporting tournaments that could actually bring in revenue for the city. And it sounds like a great idea, but it needs to be explained, and the community needs to be convinced that it's the right thing. And this is an opportunity for have the community and have all the stakeholders together asking questions and learning about this project.
Excellent. So the final question, how will you measure and determine success on this project?
The first level of success to me would be participation. Or a member of the city staff. Are we going to have a member of the city council who's elected to be a voice of the people? And are we going to have community participation? So can we get all those people to the table at one time? That's the first step. And then the second step to me for success would be, what's the participation like? Are we getting questions from the community, and are those questions being answered in an intelligent and forthright way? We have all the things in, we have all the concept in place to make that happen. Now it's just time to execute it.
So after watching the video, y'all may be wondering, what are the expected outcomes of this project? And I'd love to say the outcomes have changed for the good. And it shows how adaptable this project is. And we had issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic change the course of this project. And then we had the winter ice storm that plagued Texas that we saw on national news. And this caused us to push back the date for the town hall that we talked about in the video to March 10th. And then this project is going to be ongoing. And we're one of the only media outlets that are currently doing this in Southeast Texas, fostering a connection with the readership and the audience and the community as a whole. And this is a display of civic leadership, and we're creating dialogue which leads to success. We have upcoming after this forum, we have a forum with the Beaumont City Council members, and then we have one with the Student Government Association on campus. So this is going to be ongoing, and it's going to create a deeper connection in Southeast Texas between the media and then the audience and the community as a whole. Thank you. Any questions?
Great, thank you so much. So judges, let's go to Hannah. Do you have any questions for this team?
Yeah, can you briefly explain maybe 2 buckets of your audience? So people that you know you already have a relationship with, and maybe people that you're still trying to reach or that are missing from the audience that you're already engaging with.
So a lot of this project is a forum with the upgrading the park system in Port Arthur. And a lot of the park system that they're trying to upgrade is in lower income communities. And that would be an audience that we're trying to reach out to, those lower income communities, to see, hey, does this parks project seem like something, that you want to happen inside your community? And is it something that will be viable and a good use of tax dollars? And then the current audience is, the Port Arthur News, when they spoke to me, they talked about the email list. They have a huge email list that they're going to use to kind of push out this, the information about this open forum that's happening on March 10th. So that would be the current audience, but we need to expand into the audience that I spoke about, the lower income communities. And then when they're talking about future projects within Beaumont, we're going to use our social media that we have, the University Press. We have over 2,000 followers on Twitter, and then we have 500 on Instagram, and then we have about 2,000 on Facebook. And we're going to use that to kind of push out information about the Beaumont City Council forum, and then also the Student Government Association forum that we're going to have in the future.
All right. Forrest, do you have any questions?
No, Hannah actually kind of touched on what I was wanting to ask. So, but thank you for presenting.
All right, very good. Adriana, do you have any questions?
Hi, thanks so much for the presentation. I was kind of curious about the potential audience that you're kind of interested in reaching, the people you said were kind of like in the lower income communities. Do you think that the outreach to them is going to look different than kind of your current audience, and kind of what do you think will be some of the differences?
Okay, so like we spoke about, we're gonna use the social media both at the Port Arthur News and the University Press to push this out, and then also we're also collaborating with the Lamar Communication Department, and we're gonna use those social medias to put this out. And we have a wide following on these platforms, and we hope to reach these communities either by our social media, and then also people, word of mouth. Let's say someone sees a social media post, hey, they're having an open forum about upgrading the parks in your area. Would you be interested in attending this forum with me? Like word of mouth like that. And then also the wide email base at the Port Arthur News already would help push this out. And then also the Port Arthur News, they publish a print edition, and we think that will help push out to that audience.
All right. And Julia, do you have any questions for this team?
Sure. Thanks for your presentation. I wanted to build actually on Adriana and Hannah's questions about audience. It's good to hear the channels in which you've already established that you want to push out on in the hopes that either word of mouth or folks outside of your network will be brought into the fold. Have you thought about how to measure whether or not that is happening or gauge whether or not that is happening in order to iterate your strategy to try different things to see what actually works to bring folks not in your audience into your audience?
Yes, ma'am. So both at the Port Arthur News and the University Press, we both have very, very robust CMS tools for the website, which both have very detailed analytics about, clicks and views and all that stuff. And then also on social media, we are able to track engagement through our social media tools. For example, at the University Press, we use the Buffer social media platform to help push out our content. And within that, when you push something out to social media, we see the engagement numbers and such as link clicks, engagements, and impressions on all social media platforms. So looking at that, we'll be able to see the engagement on that. And then also, when we host a forum, we're hosting it through StreamYard, a service that helps stream the open forum to multiple different platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And within that, you can see views and then also who's all attending. And this is kind of like a Zoom call in the way that we can bring in different people and also have it controlled. We can also bring in comments from social media and have them pop up on the screen. So it shows engagement and all those different aspects, whether it be viewership or people actually engaging with the open forum and seeing how that works. And then it helps us adapt forums in the future, because this is something we're hoping to create with the Port Arthur News, to where they have forums on different city issues, such as, if they have a hurricane in the future or something like that, and such as a forum with an emergency response team or something like that in the future.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tim. And up next is our last but not least team of the day, Team In the Loop with NWPB. So we'll give them a minute to get situated, and then we will have our last presentation.
Thank you so much, Kat. We are Alana, Albert, Cheryl, and Heather from Washington State University, and this is our innovation, In the Loop with NWPB, engaging with the news through text.
So we worked with Northwest Public Broadcasting for our innovation. NWPB serves 44 counties in Washington, Idaho, Oregon, and British Columbia, mainly reaching rural communities. They serve these areas through broadcast news, but they also have a website with news articles. The organization's audience is older and mostly white. When we first met with NWPB in September, 1 in 10 visitors to nwpb.org were 18 through 24-year-olds. NWPB would like to have a more diverse audience. A great way to bring in diversity would be to start engaging with a younger audience. We thought that NWPB could try to engage with first-year college students at WSU, Washington State University. And we thought that if NWPB starts to focus on them as these people age, they would continue to get their news and engage with NWPB, which would bring in a larger audience over time. When we thought about how we could best engage with first-year college students, we thought about how college students get their news. It's probably on their phones. So we thought texting would be appropriate. We had heard of text bots before, and it's software that is automated to send certain text messages out at a specific time. They can be programmed, so if someone sends a certain word like help, they will be sent a certain message. For this, we sent out news links in different categories that someone could sign up for, such as Northwest News or Health and Science, and they would receive those texts at certain times of the day. We called our text bot In the Loop with NWPB. We also thought that text bots, because they're more automated, they might be a little easier for organizations with a smaller staff, such as NWPB, since they really can't hire another person full-time.
Although we did find out that text bots are not as automated as we thought they were going in, but that was our thinking when we chose to do a text bot.
To begin, we had to figure out what software we were going to use. We decided on TextIt for its simple interface and compatibility with NWPB's website, as well as its lower price point. However, this lower price point also comes with a more hands-on approach and a lot of time on our end, which was something we learned as we went. Next, we purchased a custom Bitly link. From there, it was a matter of trial and error and a lot of patience. Ultimately, our 1-month run of the program would cost about $300. To prepare, we worked in TextIt to create flows. A flow is essentially a flow chart that participants are guided through by the bot. In the case of signing onto the bot, participants are ultimately sorted into a group because of their answers, which will determine what kind of content we and our handy-dandy text bot send them. Of course, in order to be able to send anyone any content, we needed people to send content to. We reached out to the Merle College of Communication and were able to find a professor who agreed to offer extra credit to students who signed up for the bot. This enabled us to get about 100 participants in the program. Once we had the students, then the real challenge began. Students were able to go through the onboarding flows and get into groups. Each student would be in one group based on their content preference and one based on their format preference, but we would still meet twice a week to set up the flows for each group and pick suitable stories. Stories were on Tuesday and Friday, with Tuesday being for content, health and science, music and arts, or Northwest News, and Thursday for format, either audio, video, or written. We used a Google document to set up and communicate our choices, as well as to document our progress. We would pick stories, write an accompanying message, and then tie it all up in a bow by picking a related emoji.
We set out to reach our audience with a simple text push, a link to an article as if it were being sent from a friend. However, that didn't inspire the engagement we had hoped it would. At most, we got 3 clicks per article. To be honest, we were a bit crushed, but we channeled our growth mindset. We tried modifying our phrasing from summary to intrigue, as you can see in our February 2nd example. We said 1.6 million Washingtonians had their information compromised in a recent data breach. Could you have been one of them? But that still wasn't engaging clicks on the article links. So we adjusted our focus and we started a conversation with our audience. For our Friday texts, we asked an interactive question. What was the most impactful thing you saw in the news this week? We got several thoughtful responses at a rate of about 20%, though there was still no change to those Bitly numbers. The next week, we asked a question directly referencing content from our article. Which of the historical figures mentioned in the article do you find the most interesting? This time, we saw a 33% response rate to this question, matched by corresponding Bitly clicks, which was the most successful combination of engagement so far. Our favorite response was, Harriet Tubman has always been an amazing idol of mine. Though through this article, I found out about Florence Griffith Joyner, whom I had never heard or read anything about. It warmed our hearts. We asked for a photo submission to feature on NWPB's Instagram that shows what brightens your day. We offered a raffle for swag bags to 10 randomly selected participants. This resulted in some sweet photos and an engagement response of about 20%. We also sent out a survey to our audience and we asked their thoughts on the program. We received insights that reinforced what we had already seen, that asking for our audience's thoughts and opinions and engaging in two-way communication was by far more successful than a one-way push. Go figure. One user shared, it's a less intimidating experience to receive a few texts than to try to look for credible news sources. An encouraging and unprompted text that we received after we sent our final message was, I absolutely love this program. I think there are many students who would benefit from this, especially in terms of the fears associated with fake news and having journalism literacy. Is there any chance this platform might take off as an app directed at WSU students for another form of news delivery? We thought we could hire him in our next phase. Finally, we asked, would you still participate in this program if you weren't getting extra credit? Over 40% of our respondents said yes, indicating that the audience is out there. It's all about goals and defining engagement. We know that engagement is more than just clicks on a story. It's about having a conversation, making an impression, and building a relationship and a brand.
Continuing on that note, you might be thinking, well, how could something like this be implemented at other news organizations? Several larger news organizations are beginning to deploy similar services to reach wider audiences. KXTV ABC 10 in Sacramento has a texting service established to connect station staff with members of their community to get feedback on stories and to provide information beyond their content. A person can text their questions or comments to ABC 10, and someone from the station will respond to them. As the pandemic has raged on, thousands of messages have poured into the station with questions about restrictions, benefits, and about the virus itself. ABC 10 staff have produced on-air content to answer some submitted questions, helping their own neighbors sift through the challenges that have come with COVID-19. On a smaller scale, stations can follow the model that we've established at NWPB. They can use the texting service to expand the reach of their content to more focused, previously unreached communities. Communicating via text is great in rural areas like ours, where broadband access is limited. Individuals can connect to a news organization through a text message with ease. Over 4,300 text messages were exchanged between us and our first-year college student community, regardless of if someone was in the middle of a wheat field or in the middle of a large city. They got our message and we got theirs. A smaller team of staff can load information into an automated system like we did and monitor the inbox for news tips, viewer feedback, and much more. And while a smaller staff can limit the interaction a station has with its communities, they can still provide a personal experience through customization and engagement opportunities like the ones we've experimented with during our pilot program. Whether you're at a large news gathering organization or a small one, texting services are a versatile system that can go a long way to connect with your communities using the right focus and the right team. Any organization can adopt a text bot to best serve their communities in the way that they see fit. Finally, we'd like to take a moment to thank the excellent people of the Murrow College, NWPB, and other organizations for their support throughout this challenge. We could not have done it without you all. Thank you for your time and attention. For more information on our project, you can visit nwpb.org/intheloop or contact us at the emails listed below. At this time, we are happy to take your questions.
All right, thank you so much. Adriana, why don't we start with you since I see you? Do you have any questions for this team?
Sure. Thanks so much for presenting. I kind of wanted to go back to the beginning of your presentation. I know that, you were trying to get younger audiences. So you started with a lot of first-year students and you kind of went with text because you noticed people are kind of always on their phone. Did you ever think about like any other mediums to kind of reach kind of first-year students, maybe like a newsletter or even some sort of blog or website or anything like that?
We did, actually. We considered all of these things. One thing that we ended up talking about was email at one point, but we found that, especially like talking from our own experiences, emails are really easy to ignore. And we talked about how when we get newsletters and such, once you've gotten it a couple times, it can be really easy just to delete that email. So we wanted to look at a method that we thought had been utilized less and that would connect with people in a more direct way, and to be completely honest, a way that is harder to ignore. I know for me, I hate seeing that red bubble on my phone on the text messages, and it inspires me to click almost every time. So I think that's why we chose a text bot in particular, is we thought that it would inspire engagement in a way that newsletters and emails couldn't.
All right, Julia, do you have any questions for this team?
Yes, hi, thanks for your presentation. Yeah, one thing that your presentation got me thinking about was how products are developed. So one way products are developed is via human-centered design, where you're really meeting an audience need or want by hearing that need or want directly from the audience. So in the development phase, when you knew that your audience was going to be first year, you wanted them to be first year students, Did you talk to folks and hear that this was something that they specifically wanted, a texting tool?
A lot of that I think came from personal experience. So for an example, our Cougar Health Services is like our hospital kind of clinic on campus. And I remember that when I was a freshman, they had a program at Alive, which is our orientation, where they let people like spin a wheel and you could win a prize. But in order to spin the wheel, you had to sign up for their text bot. And a lot of people that I knew were signed up for it. I didn't unsubscribe until maybe like 3 years later because I was like, I just let them go. They send me pictures of kittens once a week. I'm fine with it. It was like supposed to be a mindfulness bot. So sometimes they would send you like little reminders to breathe or whatever. And I remember that being something that I stuck with because I thought it was interesting. And at some point I had kind of seen everything they had to offer. And that was when I finally unsubscribed. But I remember as a freshman that it was interesting to me. And I think part of the reason that we went for that demographic, we did do a survey beforehand to ask freshmen what worried them and what things they were interested in. And we didn't get a huge range of answers on that, but what we did get answered were people were concerned about the world around them and they were worried about the news and something. My sister is actually a freshman and I remember talking to her and she was telling me, I hate looking for news because I never know where to look. I never know what's going to be right and what's going to be wrong. Like, I just wish it could come to me. And so I think that was something that we went off of as well.
Great. Okay. Forrest, do you have any questions for this team?
Yeah, thank you all so much for presenting. I had 2 questions actually. The first one was, I think I may have missed this, but can you kind of like explain further what the entry points are to getting these texts? Like, do you text a certain number to then get the onboarding, or if you just kind of explain that further?
Yeah, so it was a text a certain number. We had a little graphic that we gave to the professor who agreed to give it to our students, and she showed it on the first day of class. And it was text join to the number. And when students did, they were signed up and they were given the onboarding flow. So the flow would ask them a series of questions. It would ask them for their preferred name, which we would assign as a contact name. It would ask them for their content preference, which we would give out on Tuesdays. So whether they wanted a Northwest news story, a arts and music story, or a health and science story. And then it would ask them what their favorite format of news was, which we would give them on Thursday. So they would either get another written story, an audio story, or a video story. And that was kind of the onboarding flow. And then it would send them some of the stories that we had done before. So once they signed up, they immediately got some content from the week prior to kind of get them started and not to like leave them hanging and waiting for it, so they could immediately have content. So that's sort of what that looked like. And we did have various graphics and even videos and stuff created in case it ever got to the point where we were to expand beyond just the college students. We did focus on them for this pilot program, but if we were to go further, we have ads and things ready with the code and all of that, just kind of ready to go out whenever needed.
All right. Any follow-ups for us?
Yeah, it kind of touches on what Adriana was asking, but like, did y'all have any other measurable goals other than like stuff that you actually measured other than just clicking on the links? Like, I noticed y'all had like a follow us on Instagram. Did you track any social follows from that, or like maybe anyone who like donated or maybe subscribed to a newsletter?
Heather, your engagement, do you want to kind of go over some of that?
Yeah, so our Instagram and our content actually was just this past week. So we were right down to the wire. So we weren't able to see any measurable effects from that. Really what we were looking for in one of our surveys that we sent out was the probability of participating in a program like this if they weren't getting the extra credit. Honestly, we would have considered it maybe relevant if we only had maybe 5 or 10 students that said, yeah, we do this, because we're all students. We know we're not going to spend our time on anything unless we're getting something out of it. And the fact that we had 40% of our respondents say, yeah, I do it. Now, they could be just telling us what we want to hear, but we did like to hear that. And so it is exciting. And we thought that it showed that there was potential with this particular audience. And this structure and this framework could actually work with other audiences. We could absolutely reach other like marginalized communities or communities that have been largely overlooked, that are communities that Northwest Public Broadcasting absolutely wants to reach, but may not have had tools in place to do so. So we're really hopeful that this can be something to reach all community members.
Awesome, thank you.
Hannah, do you have any questions for this team?
Forrest got mine, and you just spoke to what I was going to ask about. So thank you very much for sharing.
All right. Well, thank you, you guys. And I will share the link that you just shared with me. So we are going to give the judges an hour to talk offline, and then we will be back at 4 o'clock to award the prizes. Our first place team is going to win $10,000. Our second place team will be winning $2,500, and our third place team will win $1,000. So we will see everybody in an hour for the award ceremony and to see who won the competition today. Thank you all.
Do we want to, are we supposed to be?
Wait. Don't talk in here because it's going to stay live.
Right, yes.
Okay.
So I have a Zoom. Do y'all want to use mine?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, I'll just put it in. Well, I'm going to put it in panelists. I think just the 6 of us get that, right, Kat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. I just wanted to make sure before you.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, I'll see you all there.
All right, see you in a bit. Bye.
Welcome to the award ceremony for the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute's 2021 Student Innovation Competition. I'm Randy Picht, Executive Director at RJI. So now it's time, after a full day of judging, to reveal the top teams of the competition and the winner of the $10,000 first prize. But first, I want to extend our thanks to our terrific judges, Julia Chen, from the managing editor of KQED, Adriana Lacey, Senior Associate Audience and Growth for Axios, Forrest Milburn, Audience Engagement at Miami Herald, and Hannah Wise, Social Strategy Editor at the New York Times. They all stayed glued to their Zoom windows, asked great questions, and offered plenty of good insights today. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank all of our finalists, who are really all winners for taking on this challenge and putting in the hours of work to try something new to help journalism get stronger. Before we get to the winners, just a reminder that we're celebrating some firsts for this 14-year-old RJI competition, specifically having student teams from all over the country and incorporating a try your idea out aspect to the annual challenge. We're very happy with how both turned out today. And finally, I want to thank RJI's Director of Innovation, Kat Duncan, whose leadership and oversight of the competition from start to finish was a sight to behold. Of course, we couldn't behold it in person, but I know her emails, texts, phone calls, and Zoom recordings would bear me out. Kat, would you like to say a few words about the journey?
It's been a really fun process with all these teams. I've gotten to see them face a lot of challenges, more than they presented today. So I hope all the teams know that even if you didn't place, you did amazing work. And we're so proud of how you teamed up with your local newsrooms to help them engage with their communities. So I applaud all the teams, and I can't wait to see who won.
All right. All right. Thanks, Kat. All right. So now the moment we've been waiting for. Our third place team and the winner of $1,000 is the Fantastic Two. So congratulations. Judges said they thought this was a strong project that has the potential to be scaled to other communications. Congratulations. Team, I just wanted to ask you a question here on the big board. There you are. Your project was based on Instagram, and you talked to the entrepreneurs and the small businesses and then put their content into Instagram. What was the reaction out there in terms of how many folks were familiar with Instagram, or were you also kind of educating them on that tool?
Thank you for the question. So some of the business owners, some of them, they don't have Instagram accounts. So then it's very interesting. And then they, like, for example, one of our business owners, she just got into the Instagram account, and then she was really excited when I shared her the link to the Instagram account and tagged her on the Instagram. And then it's been like it's been a pleasure to work with them. And when we sent out an email invitation to 900 businesses, many of them came back to us, and then they're really enthusiastic. And some of them even said that, we will fill out the survey by Monday. What's your deadline? And one of them said that, hey, I cannot, I'm not really good at writing. Can I have an interview? So we were really excited when I talked to him, and then I interviewed him by doing over Zoom, and then I said that, your story is really, really great, and then we will we plan to put it into a podcast, because we also we have the recording anyway, and it's been a great journey to work in this project. Larissa.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having us. We really appreciated all the work that Kat did. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I look forward to seeing lessons learned in the newsletter for many months to come. So congratulations and thank you. Okay, our second place winner and the winner of the $2,500 second prize is NYU Epicenter. Judges commented the daisy chain is an easy way to understand helpful concepts for network building. And I thought it was a great idea. I really like this project. I liked also the fact that you said you don't really need funding to do it. What you need is community and trust. So what is the fastest way to build community and trust? And does the daisy chain approach help with that?
Yeah, I hope so. And I think some of the successes that we had with this project show that sometimes it goes in a way that you don't quite understand, and that's, or you didn't expect. And that's what happens when you put the story in the hands of the community itself.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's great. Well, congratulations. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. It's a great project. We hope it keeps going like you guys are planning. So thank you very much. Finally, that makes the winner of this year's competition, and our $10,000 prize remains to be Zine from the University of Southern California. Congratulations. Judges felt that this team really showed the full range of engagement opportunities for newsrooms, and it's from video to print to audio, everything in between. So congratulations, and it was really a terrific project. I am wondering, let's see, my question here for you is that your project, is so fun and lively, and delivered to such a fun and lively audience, which is great. I was wondering if you were thinking about maybe if you would only deliver it to members and make it a membership only option as a way or maybe that was part of the plan. Anyway, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, actually, that's something I realized that I don't know if it was super clear in the in our presentation, but not only will it be distributed at like our local taco trucks, museums, those community centers for free to the community, it'll also incentivize membership by including it in the membership package that comes. Like I said, LA Taco has a super duper cool membership package. So you get discounts to local taco shops, a hoodie, access to you get access to like special different types of content. And the zine will hopefully, since it's limited run, we're using scarcity marketing by including it in by including it in membership packages to incentivize more membership.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's terrific. So congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And have a few tacos this weekend to celebrate. Absolutely. All right, so let's have a round of applause for all of our finalists and our winners. Okay. Thank you very much. So congratulations to all our winners and all the teams for a great job. And thank you to all who joined us today on Zoom to watch these talented students from across the United States. For more information about RJI or to watch a recording of these presentations, please make sure to visit our website at rjionline.org. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.